Chapter 29-21. The corner of the old village chief's mouth curled into a deep sneer. He thought to himself, "These youngsters are still too young." Their sudden appearance in the happy village already made him vigilant. In addition, the little girl casually made up some nonsense to him, saying that they were looking for relatives. At that time, he somewhat understood that these people probably found something and wanted to rely on him to continue the investigation. So he beat them at their own game and casually said something. Originally, he wanted to give them this protective talisman and secretly control these people, who knew when the black gas in the protective talisman rushed to Immerse's face. Immerse's body suddenly emitted a faint Buddhist light, separating the black fog. The black fog trembled and retreated, afraid that it was too late. And at this time, if there was an enlightened monk here, he would definitely be shocked by the exquisiteness of this little monk's Buddhist teachings. It turns out that this little monk was knocking on the wooden fish while chanting scriptures, forming a swastika barrier around Arbor's group. The golden light was so bright that ordinary people could not see it with their naked eyes. But that black, baleful aura was originally faint. Now that it was pushed back by the Buddhist light, it became more and more like a little white flower drifting in the wind and rain, as if it was about to dissipate. Of course, the old village chief and Hua could not see this Buddhist seal barrier. Even Immerse and Arbor could only feel a trace of warmth, filling their surroundings. As for other things, they really could not see. The little monk finally stopped knocking on the wooden fish and raised his head. His jade-white little face was filled with a serious expression. He said in a methodical manner, "Benefactor, the sea of bitterness is boundless. Turn back and the shore is at hand. If you turn back in time, this little monk can still save your lives. Otherwise, regret is hard to repent. The sea of bitterness in hell will be waiting for you." Stinky monk, what are you mumbling about? The old village chief flew into a rage out of humiliation. The clothes in front of his chest suddenly burst open. A ghost claw like withered vines stretched out from his chest, directly grabbing towards the little monk's neck. Immerse and Xiao Mu had been paying attention to those people the entire time. When they saw the old village chief move, they immediately creased their brows. Immerse's raven moon sword flew up and slashed down, instantly severing that old ghost claw at the base. "Ah!" The old village chief roared angrily. Another 4 or 5 ghost claws drilled out from his chest and back. At this moment, his entire body seemed to be mutating rapidly. The ghost claws that came out from his front and back were all whipping towards Immerse. Chi. Layers of black smoke emerged from the places where the ghost claws struck. They were melted away by the golden light that was invisible to the naked eye. As a result, that ghost claw was eliminated before it could even reach Immerse's side. "Ah!" The old village chief's face changed color as he saw this, and he began to twist crazily. "I'm going to kill you all. I'll kill you all." "Ha! So it's a demonic cultivator," Immerse muttered to herself. She grabbed Arbor's wrist and took 2 steps back. On the side, Chun-Chi and Lu Zheng frowned as they looked at the old man in front of them. Why would such a thing appear in a normal village? Arbor wasn't surprised at all. After all, she and Immerse had experienced the underground village incident once before. This underground village was a paradise for cultivating demonic cultivators and raising zombies. Right, Zombies Arbor glanced sideways at the door, but didn't see anything that looked like a zombie. Perhaps this place didn't raise zombies? Arbor thought. Chapter 29-22. Thump, 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 thump. The sound of knocking on the door just happens to ring out, and at this moment the village chief is in the midst of a fierce battle with the layers of Buddha's light. He simply can't break through the little monk's Buddha's light barrier. It can only circle around the outer layer while whistling from time to time. Lu Zheng shakes his head. "No wonder you were able to dodge my hidden weapon at the village entrance." He thought the old man was just lucky, but now it seems that the old village chief is a demonic cultivator, and he dodged it with his own strength. Arbor isn't surprised. To be able to govern such a big underground village, he must have some ability. If ordinary people want to become strong, they can either reach the peak through body forging or fuse with the power of evil plants and evil beasts to become a demonic cultivator. But now it seems that there is a third way, relying on Tian Yun's medicine to awaken a person with special ability. Of course, the probability of this is extremely low. Isn't it because of this that most people mutated into zombies? Arbor's heart is somewhat absent-minded. She is thinking if she was at the end of her road and there was a kind of medicine in front of her that could allow her to reach the heavens in a single bound, would she take it? When people are forced into a corner, the decision they make may even scare themselves. Thump! Two village women barge in, and when they see the scene of fighting in the hall, both of them cry out in alarm. Village Chief. Commander Hu. Huerhua's fierce eyes look at the two of them. Why are you two here? At this moment, the village chief is in a state of mutation, and these two women have seen it all. It seems that they can't be left alive. Huerhua's eyes reveal a trace of murderous intent. Those two village women have long been scared silly, and when they hear Huerhua's question, they tremble and cry out, Village Chief, how? How did you become? Monster! It's that monster! The other woman can't help but scream out, It's you. It's actually you. I recognize you. Half a month ago in the middle of the night. It was you who took my child from my house. I'll fight you, you old monster. So it was you who took my child. I trusted you so much, but you actually pretended to tell me that you would gather the villagers to help me find my child. The woman roared with bloodshot eyes. She picked up a rolling pin by the door and waved it at the village chief who had countless ghost claws in the middle of the hall. Boom! The old village chief used a ghost claw to slap away the rolling pin in the woman's hand. Another ghost claw swung over and grabbed the woman's neck, throwing her into the air. Everything happened too quickly. By the time Lu Zheng wanted to save her, the woman had already been torn into pieces by countless ghost claws. Her flesh and blood dripped down. The old village head was like a devil. He raised his neck and opened his mouth wide, sucking in the flesh and blood that the woman spilled down. His body began to mutate rapidly. His body was like a freak with a twisted neck. 17 or 18 ghost claws drilled out of his chest and back. Some were lashing out, some were clawing, and some were even clenched into fists and punched towards Arbor's face. Chi! Arbor didn't make a move. He saw that the ghost claws hadn't even reached his eyes when they were burned clean by purple flames. Arbor's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. He stared at the old village chief, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. Chapter 29-23. After sucking so much blood, the old village chief's entire body began to swell up a little. His face had already been squeezed out of shape. A ghost claw grew out of his neck, directly whipping towards Arbor's body. You look really disgusting. Arbor coldly glanced at him, saying so. The village chief's face was red with anger. His two bulging dead fish eyes fiercely glared at her. Hand over the black level cultivation method you were talking about, and I can still spare your life. If it wasn't for his greed for the black level cultivation method this little girl spoke of, he might have already made a move on them when they were still up there, instead of luring them in. Originally, he wanted to lure these 5 people in. If possible, he would take them in as villagers of Happiness Village. If not, after interrogating them for the cultivation method, he would rob them of everything in their inner worlds, then kill them and eat them. But now it seems that he really was hunting geese all day long, only to be pecked blind by the geese. He actually suffered such a big setback in front of a little bald donkey, simply hateful to the extreme. Black level cultivation method? Arbor coldly looked at him. A dead person doesn't need any cultivation method. Saying so, the startled swan dagger had already quietly flown in front of the village chief, a sword stabbing towards his left eye. This startled swan dagger was just a small dagger. When it flew out of his consciousness, it didn't make a sound at all. It wasn't until it was right in front of the old man's eyes that he suddenly realized. But in the next instant, he only felt pain in his eye. Half of his eyeball had been gouged out by the startled swan dagger. The old village chief had never suffered such a big loss. He suddenly shouted to the side. Commander Hu, how long are you going to watch the show? Hua was complaining incessantly. How is he just watching the show? He wanted to make a move from the beginning, but just as he was about to make a move, a heavy pressure had already fallen on his body, pressing him down by a few inches. He couldn't even take a step forward. Damn it! Hua forced out a few words from between his teeth. Old ghost. You hold on over there, my people will be here soon. I advise you to hurry up and let us go. If you let go now, I can still let you leave like this. Otherwise what? Roar. Several different roars came from outside the courtyard. Hua's face lit up as he coldly laughed and said, Now, even if you want to leave, you won't be able to arc. He felt a sharp pain in his ear as his left ear was cut off. You talk too much, Arbor said coldly, then turned to Mo Lien and said, I'll deal with the zombies outside. You deal with them. Jojo, don't worry. The little girl flashed him 2 white teeth. I'm a person with antibodies now. Even if this thing catches me, I'm not afraid of it. After saying that, it waved its little paw at him, leaving the 3 of them and the little monk to deal with Hua and the old village chief. He then went out of the house. As soon as he went out, he saw 3 fast-moving zombies with green faces and fangs rushing towards him. Looking at their speed, the veins all over their skin were twisting like earthworms. Their facial features were already blurred like humans. If he guessed correctly, these should be level 3 high-level zombies. Hua really put in a lot of effort this time. Chapter 29-24. Summoning 3 high-level zombies all at once to deal with them. Wasn't she putting a lot of effort? The corners of Arbor's mouth curled up slightly. Come on then, I'll make you pay as much as you come. Hua, this commander who was still too naive. Xiaomu summoned out her black feral and leaped up to a high-level zombie with green fur growing out of its face. She struck it hard on the head. Bang! The corpse puppet was struck by the attack and immediately flew back several steps. Arbor didn't give it a chance to catch its breath. She leaped forward lightly, her fingertips moving quickly, and a thorny wooden vine flew out from her hand, swinging straight at the zombie's face. Although this high-level zombie had developed intelligence, it wasn't as agile as a human. The zombie couldn't dodge this attack, and the thorny vine whip directly bloomed on its green-haired face. Plop! A piece of rotten flesh on the left side of the zombie's face fell to the ground, forming a sticky lump. Arbor was disgusted by it and jumped to the side. At this time, the other 2 zombies also pounced and attacked Arbor. Arbor wouldn't give 3 high-level zombies a chance to attack her. Thus, she turned her gaze and dashed directly toward the earth wall on the side. When the 3 zombies saw her running away, they roared and chased after her. When they reached the earth wall, Arbor's figure was nowhere to be seen. All of a sudden, Arbor darted out from behind a zombie. The startled swan dagger flashed and sank into the back of the zombie's neck. At the same time, Arbor's small hand was covered in a layer of frost, and she suddenly grabbed one of the zombie's arms. Tisk. Caught off guard, the unlucky zombie's arm was torn off by Arbor's small hand with the Vajra talisman attached to it. It didn't feel any pain. After Arbor tore off its arm, it used its other hand to grab it. Thus, it was once again tragically cut off by Arbor. The wall she was standing on now only allowed 1 zombie to pounce over and fight her. At this moment, the unlucky zombie's 2 hands were useless, so it could only use its body to fly. Arbor initially thought that this high-level zombie might be like the one she had encountered before. Its limbs could be detached from its body, and even its fingers could be peeled off from its limbs to attack her like hidden weapons. However, after waiting for a long time, the corpse puppet did not take any further action. Obviously, it could not do so. Hua reckoned that they were defective high-grade zombie puppets, which was why he could summon 3 of them at once. This kind of high-level corpse puppet, regardless of whether it was an incomplete product or not, would definitely have a crystal core in its head. Arbor threw out 3 ice blades and finished off the undead hag. Then, he dug out a gray crystal core from its head without any expression on his face. He weighed the crystal core in his hand and felt that it was not bad. However, the crystal core in the head of this level 3 advanced zombie puppet had mutated into a gray color, Could it also be due to its evolution? Arbor stuffed the crystal core into her inner world, planning to throw it to her dear husband when she returned. After finishing off one of the three, the other two were defective high-grade zombies, so it was more convenient to finish them off. As long as she guarded this wall and did not give them a chance to surround and attack her, there would definitely be no major problems. After finishing off the other two defective zombies in the same way, he dug out the crystal cores in their heads. Arbor looked back and saw Imol Yin walking out the door. My head hurts. I'm going to sleep first. Chapter 29-25. That Shin-Shi drags the old village chief's crippled body over and heavily pushes him to the ground. Roar, roar. The old village chief lets out a series of inhuman cries, his whole face contorted into a dark purple color, his eyes bulging as if they're going to pop out of their sockets. Hu Erhua's appearance is also very miserable. When he was pushed out of the house by Lu Zheng, his hands were tied behind his back, his mouth kept clamoring, "What do you want to do? I advise you to think clearly before doing anything. The power behind us isn't something you people can resist." Arbor glances at him and says coldly, "What power? Isn't it just Tianyin? You're just a small commander of Tianyin. Do you think you're important enough? Just because you died, Tianyin launched a revenge operation against us?" Hu Erhua's face stiffens slightly, his neck stiffening as he says, He's actually speechless. What kind of situation is this? He's actually speechless from a little girl's rebuke? Because he's also very clear that in the organization, there really are countless commanders like him. Whether it's strength or intelligence, he's not that outstanding. The organization simply won't care about his life or death. Thinking about it, he really hates it. Originally, he was doing well in the eastern part of north-facing Great Forest, and it took him many years to build a decent-sized base. If he only had to sharpen himself for another 2 or 3 years, maybe he'd be able to use this base to win the favor of those higher-ups in the organization. At that time, maybe he'd be able to advance even further. But now a good base has been destroyed in the hands of these people. Hu Erhua hates it to know, and just thinking about it. It's just that the old village chief, a pretty strong demonic cultivator, can't beat these people. At this time, the commotion caused by Hu Erhua's family has already attracted the attention of many villagers. Hu Erhua seems to have a very high status in the village. When the villagers saw Hu Erhua's family being besieged, they all spontaneously organized themselves, carrying hoes and rakes, running over with fiendish expressions, their emotions surging as they excitedly roared something. For a moment, the road is blocked by these villagers crowded with people. Arbor glances at them and says in a voice that's neither high nor low, "Do you want to know who this person is?" As she spoke, she kicked the tied-up old village chief in front of everyone. Everyone took a look and couldn't help but turn pale with fright. They whispered to each other, "Isn't that the old village chief? It can't be. How did the old village chief become like this?" At this time, another woman who had broken into Hu Erhua's house with the woman who had been killed rushed out and shouted to the villagers, "Everyone, you're right. It was him, the village chief. It's our village chief, that tree vine monster." Wow. More and more villagers gathered around. Everyone let out cries of disbelief. They couldn't be more familiar with this tree vine monster. In recent years, it would appear in the villagers' homes from time to time in the middle of the night, picking on the boys. The boy who had been dragged away had never returned. Many people said that he had been eaten alive by the tree vine monster. As for the village chief, once he knew that a boy had gone missing in the village, he would mobilize the entire village to search the nearby villages in secret. He would pretend to be worried and do his best for the villagers. Chapter 29-26. Who would have thought that this old village chief is actually that tree vine monster? He can actually pretend to be like this. In front of each of them, he pretends to be a sanctimonious, kind-hearted person. But in the end, the villagers' emotions surge. Each and every one of them is filled with righteous indignation and curses. This was especially true for the families who had lost their children. Their entire family went up to the village chief, kicking and punching him. Lu Zheng separates these ordinary villagers. Don't get too close. This old guy is not a good person, Be careful not to get caught by the ghost claws on his body. Now, they can clearly see the true face of this old village chief. They see that the countless ghost claw-like vines on his body have already been chopped into pieces, leaving only the long ghost claw on his neck, trying to struggle. He is a demonic cultivator. Arbor lightly says, "Now can you tell us why you are in this underground village?" An old man shakily steps forward, crying and says, "Immortal, please save us." A few years ago, several monsters that look like humans appeared in our happy village, specifically eating people on sight. The people in the village who can escape have already escaped, leaving behind the old, weak, women and children, about 100 families. They are so poor that they don't even have money to run away. So the old village chief proposed to move our village underground. This way, first, we can effectively stop the man-eating monsters. Second, the safety of the village can also be guaranteed. At that time, we all felt that the village chief was wholeheartedly thinking for the village, so we are very grateful to him. Who knows? He is a beast in human face. The woman at the side also cries, "Originally, we thought that if we moved to the underground, we would definitely not provoke monsters anymore. Who knew that good times don't last long? It has only been a few months since we moved to the underground village. Starting from 4 years ago, every year our village would lose a few boys, all taken away by that tree vine monster. At this point, many people began to gnash their teeth. We were kept in the dark by this old man for so many years. We still wholeheartedly thought that he is a warm-hearted philanthropist." Arbor sneers, "He lied to you more than this." After saying that, he stepped forward and kicked Hu Erhua. "Lead the way to your nest." Hu Erhua shuddered from head to toe, and he looked at Xiao Mu in disbelief. How did this little girl know that he had another secret base here? "It should be around that icicle flower tree," Arbor said with certainty. She noticed it when she came down. The area around the ice tree had the densest, baleful Een energy. It was so thick that it could not be dissolved. Arbor glanced at the villagers. "Take off the amulets around your necks." She usually didn't like to explain this and that, but looking at the ignorant eyes of the villagers, she only felt that their stupidity was somewhat pitiful. Do they have to believe whatever others say? He had no judgment at all. He didn't even have a trace of doubt. "This isn't a protective talisman at all," Arbor said indifferently. "This is a profound Een talisman. If you wear it for a long time, the Een energy will enter your body, and you will be easily controlled by others. Even if your mind is strong enough, your body will continue to deteriorate year by year. Therefore, this Xianin talisman was of no benefit to an ordinary person." Hearing this, everyone turned pale with fright. They hurriedly took off the profound Een talisman from their necks and threw on the ground. Chapter 29-27. These people belong to the Tian Yun organization. Arbor looks around and says, "To them, this place is just an extremely small stronghold in this organization. And you guys," Arbor looks at them again, "are all their potential test subjects. If you don't believe me, then follow me." Without giving these shocked villagers a chance to ask questions, Arbor turns around and signals Chunxi and Lu Zheng to carry the old village chief and Hu Erhua to follow him. Mo Lian's figure flashes and comes to Arbor's side. The two of them walk very quickly and arrive at the side of the frost-covered tree in a flash. Arbor looks up at the tree. From the outside, the tree seems to be completely fine. But that kind of Een energy is so dense that it almost can't be dispersed. Lu Zheng throws Hu Erhua to the ground and kicks him. "Let's do it." Hu Erhua shudders and turns to look at Arbor and Mo Lian standing behind him. Mo Lian curls her lips into a smile that isn't a smile. "Do you want me to do it for you?" Hu Erhua shudders again and scrambles forward a few steps. He circles around the ice tree and sends out a few palm strikes up and down. A jade talisman suddenly jumps out from his sleeve. Like a key, it is embedded in the barrier in front of him. This is really an important place. This barrier is even surrounded by a talisman array. After this talisman array opens, more and more Een energy seeps out from inside. Normal people naturally can't sense it. Only people with profound cultivation can sense the Een energy from this kind of Xian Een talisman array. Arbor cultivates talisman array and naturally has a bit more perception than normal people. Usually, when he walked around the ice tree, he would only feel that it was a little cold at most. Suddenly, a cloud of black fog floats out from inside the ice tree. It opens its huge mouth like a ghost head and rushes to swallow Arbor, who is standing at the front. The speed was so fast that Arbor only had time to put up an eggshell defensive barrier. He didn't have time to do anything else before he was swallowed by the black fog. A pair of cold, scarlet eyes appeared in the black fog. Without any explanation, it opened its mouth and roared at her. With a rumble, it swept towards Arbor like a tidal wave. In the blink of an eye, a barrier formed by black flames was erected in front of Arbor. The vibrations formed by the sound waves were completely isolated and didn't cause any damage to Arbor. Arbor had just removed the defensive barrier on her body when her slender waist was embraced by Emolien. Emolien didn't know if he was comforting her or comforting himself. He hugged her and unconsciously stroked her waist twice. Sir Jojo blinked and turned his head to look at the red-eyed zombie that had suddenly emerged from the black fog. This high-level zombie was different from the 3.5 defective ones from before. Not only could it emit sound waves, but it could also separate its hands from its body. 2 of its arms were about to fly in front of them. Emolien narrowed his cold eyes. Black lotus flowers the size of a fist, carrying cold and merciless killing intent, rose from the ground little by little. The black flames were swallowing the energy around them. Lu Zheng and Qinqi were isolated from the black fog. The instant the black fog transformed into a giant skeletal ghost face and opened its huge mouth to devour Qiao Mu, they only saw Crown Prince Mo's figure flicker and burrow inside without hesitation. The 2 of them were trying their best to release several bursts of holy power to disperse the ghost fog. Chapter 29-28. Suddenly, he realized that the skull face in front of him was gradually becoming distorted. It looked as if it had been stabbed by someone, and the huge skull mouth was crooked, as if it was howling something. All of a sudden, it was smashed from the inside. The whole mass of black fog was torn apart from the middle, and gradually turned into fragmented shadows. Wisp by wisp, it scattered in all directions. The figures of Arbor and Emolien, who were originally swallowed by the black fog, also appeared. As for Hu Erhua, who had put up a final struggle and used a sinister move, Arbor saw that his eyes were wide open, and there was a black hole burned in his neck when he came out. It was obvious that he had been executed by Emolien in a rage, and was already thoroughly dead. Roar! When the villagers saw a human-shaped corpse puppet jump out, they all cried out in alarm. "It's this man-eating monster! Man-eating monster!" Emolien's finger moved, and a slender whip made of black flames coiled around the corpse puppet's head with a whoosh. With a heavy whip, the corpse puppet's head was flung. "Pa!" A crisp sound rang out, and this high-level corpse puppet let out a painful roar like a human. Emolien's figure flashed, and she quickly came to its side. A fierce light flashed in her hand, and she swiftly drew the black flames into the raven moon. The slender, pure black sword suddenly released a black light that was as pure as the night. The pure, ink-colored light dazzled the eyes of everyone present. The black light that bloomed from the raven moon sword formed the shape of a huge sword in midair. It descended from the sky and went straight for the high-level corpse puppet's head. That corpse puppet strongly felt the taste of danger approaching, but there was simply no way to dodge. No way to dodge. The illusion of the huge black sword chopped that corpse puppet from the head down and directly split it into 2 halves. It made those rotten and necrotic internal organs in its body, which were almost unrecognizable from their original appearance. All scattered and blossomed all over the ground. It was not badly mutilated, but that scene would make people have nightmares at night. 1 hit, 1 kill. Arbor glanced at it and sighed without saying anything. This man was really, he didn't know what to say. He was too vengeful. Just because this corpse puppet had wanted to tear her apart, he had completely torn her apart when he attacked. What a bloodthirsty child, but he was really likable. When Emolien turned his head, he saw his wifey smiling at him. The little fellow's smile was like the melting of the first snow and the blooming of flowers. He couldn't help but smile as well. His originally cold and murderous face melted like ice, showing a bit of gentleness. The two of them looked at each other, and Mo Yin was overjoyed. She floated to her side and held her little hand. "Jojo, you're smiling." The little guy reached out and touched his little face. Did he smile? It turned out that he was smiling so naturally that he didn't even notice it. At this time, the black fog around the ice tree had already dispersed. Everyone was shocked to see the scene in front of them. After the talisman formation was unraveled, its original appearance was revealed. The ice tree in front of them looked like it was planted in a mass grave. The roots of the tree were piled with many animal and human skeletons. It looked like they had died in extreme pain and disgust. "Umapa." The little monk looked over with a serious face, but his eyes were suddenly blinded by Arbor. Children shouldn't look at so many messy things. Arbor knocked his smooth little head. "Wait." Chapter 29:29. The little stoic hastily pulled her husband's hand and pattered over. Sure enough, they saw a pitch-black sinkhole under the ice tree. There was a steep passage inside that led to an unknown place. "I'll go down and take a look," Mo Yin said as she squeezed her small hand. Arbor vigorously shook her small head. "Let's go together." The little monk hastily grabbed her hand. "Benefactress, I'll go with you. Why are you joining the fun? Stay here. You can't recite the rebirth incantation of so many people by yourself at such a young age. You have to find a monastery for this." Before Arbor could finish speaking, she saw the little monk shake his small head. This young monk feels that something is off down there. This aura is seriously too insidious. Arbor's mouth couldn't help but twitch. How could this little monk be so comical and adorable? The old monk called himself Old Monk, but he followed the trend and called him Little Monk. Stay here, even if it's insidious. Arbor poked his forehead and pulled Mo Yin down that steep path. "Umipa." The little monk grumbled. "Benefactress, you should bring this young monk along. This young monk can help you a bit with a Buddha-CLO." Benefactress. Benefactress. Benefactress was really strange. Why did she seem to be fleeing in defeat? She pulled that Prince Mo down the sinkhole as if she was fleeing. "Qinqijing, pay attention to your defenses." Arbor tossed out this sentence before leaving. She and Mo Yin floated down that long, steep staircase. This long staircase was about several hundred meters down. When they reached the bottom, the rocks under their feet were quite painful. Arbor kicked her small feet and creased her brows. Mo Yin looked down at her. A black fire spread over and melted the rocks several hundred meters in front of her into powder, which then spread out on the ground. Soon, a bit of underground water seeped out from under the powdered rocks, but it didn't affect their walking. Jojo felt that the stone powder was quite comfortable to step on. He looked up at Mo Yin and said, "There's an underground water source here, right?" Mo Yin nodded. "I think so. I wonder what's inside." It was reasonable to say that the little monk was quite sharp. If he said that the aura below was sinister, then there must be something extremely disgusting up ahead. Children should watch less of those messy things, lest they get nightmares at night. The two of them moved very quickly. It didn't take long for them to arrive at the front of the passage. They stood in front of a locked iron door. Without another word, Mo Yin melted that iron door with his fire. Sir Jojo calmly stepped over a puddle of liquid that had been melted by the black fire. Then he frowned. The smell was extremely fishy, causing the two of them to subconsciously take a step back and quickly block off their five senses. The little fellow looked ahead with disdain. It was dark at the end, and there seemed to be a large stone room. After blocking off their five senses, the two of them felt a little better. They ran to the end and saw three strange-looking animals squatting in front of the stone room. Speaking of which, they might not be animals. This was because these three animals all looked very strange. They all had human-like heads, but they were of different sizes. One of them had the body of a lion, another had a pair of eagle wings on its back, and the last one had copper skin and iron bones wrapped in steel rhinoceros skin. The person with the lion's body had a very large head, like a winter melon planted on the lion's body. See you at 12. Chapter 29:30. As for the one with eagle wings, its head is only the size of a fist. Under its slender neck, there's a huge eagle's body. Its body proportions are very uncoordinated. It makes people feel nauseous just by looking at it. The other monster, wrapped in thick rhinoceros skin, has a pair of curly and sharp horns on its head. Let's call these three strange things that are a combination of man and beast. They all have the same characteristic, each pair of scarlet eyes, their expression ferocious and terrifying. Arbor looks at these three bronze statues with a strange expression. After a long while, he finds his voice and tugs at Mo Lien's sleeve. Lien, this leader of Tian Yun, don't tell me he thinks of himself as the divine creator? Mo Lien's mouth twitches, revealing a contemptuous smile. Look at the name of the organization he came up with. Tian Yun, Tian Yun. He just thinks of himself as the heavenly Tao, as the heavens, and now he's just casually creating humans. Why not? Arbor suddenly brightens, nodding. You have a point. These three bronze statues clearly represent strength, speed, and defense. Mo Lien says with a smile. This leader of Tian Yun wants to recreate this world. Now it seems that he doesn't want to exterminate humanity. He just wants to become stronger. The mutated drug he created was obviously meant to improve the physique of ordinary people. Let the human body gain the strength of a tiger or wolf, the speed of an eagle or other abilities, and the defensive power of a rhinoceros. And then he failed. Arbor's eyes brighten. The more he says, the more he feels that their speculation should be close to the truth. This experiment should have started a long time ago. Mo Lien frowns. I suspect it's been at least 100 years. Arbor clenches his small fist. You mean because of the repeated failures of improvement, this leader of Tian Yun began to get impatient. So he thought of a way to rely on the night caw birds to spread the mutated drug to see how many people can mutate better and how many people will become failures. What a lunatic! Mo Lien shook her head. The battlefield in the lower star region became his final choice. Arbor clenched his small fist again. This person must be from the upper three provinces. Why do you say that? Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh. His Jojo, with her face full of righteous indignation, looked so beautiful. It's common for people from the upper three prefectures to look down on the lower realm and the middle six prefectures. Arbor pursed his lips and said, this person didn't even build the underground village near the imperial capital. Instead, he built it in such a remote place, facing the rosy clouds peak in the east of the Great Forest. Clearly, they don't want to destroy the living environment of the three continents for the time being. The little fellow snorted. Come to think of it, it must be because he lives on this continent. Mo Lien had to admit that the little fellow's analysis was very reasonable. Moreover, according to the previous investigation, the headquarters of Tian Yun is very likely to be hidden somewhere in the three continents. Isn't the leader of Tian Yun thinking too highly of himself? Sir Jojo rolled his eyes. Does he think the world is unfair or what? Not only does he want to create a world, but he also wants to create a human? Oh no, maybe it shouldn't be called creating human, but creating some kind of mysterious creature. Chapter 29:31. He's an extremely ambitious person. Mo Lien sighed. If he could set up this trap 100 years ago, it means that this is a mission passed down from generation to generation. A family mission? You could say that. Mo Lien nodded. Or maybe it's a sect mission, or an aristocratic family, or even a mission passed down from generation to generation. If that's the case, then every major power in the three states is worthy of suspicion. Arbor was speechless. There were at least 800, if not 1,000, big and small powers in the three states. Looking for clues about the heavenly fortune from these powers was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Mo Lien smiled and shook her hand. I'll move these bronze statues away. Xiaomu shook her head and said disdainfully, these bronze statues make people feel uncomfortable just by looking at them. How about we shatter them? Emolien turned to look at his little wife and nodded. Okay. Arbor threw him 2 Vajra talismans and attached them to his hands. After a few punches, the 3 bronze statues were broken into pieces by the 2 violent fellows and scattered on the ground. The entrance to the stone room appeared in front of them. The 2 stepped on the broken statues and entered the stone room hand in hand. Only the sound of 2 gears turning could be heard. It was an extremely subtle sound. In less than a second, several metal fences came down from behind the 2 of them. These metal fences rose and fell one after another. For a moment, such sounds came from all around them. Arbor and Emolien stood in the middle of the stone room. They turned to look and found that they were surrounded by metal fences. It was as if they were in a large circular prison. There were vertical fences all around them, and the gaps between the fences were so small that even a baby's hand could not squeeze through. The 2 of them looked at each other, then looked around. They were sure that they were locked in this metal cage. The stench grew stronger, until an earth-shattering roar rang out. Emolien shielded his wifey as they retreated a few steps back. The 2 of them looked up at the same time and saw a monster clinging to the ceiling of the stone room. That pair of small, flickering red eyes were staring at them without blinking. Arbor almost vomited in disgust. Fuck, what the hell is this? It was even more disgusting than a human-faced spider. In any case, the human-faced arachnid was really a spider. Aside from its head that resembled a human, the rest of its body was very strange. It had the slender legs of a spider and a total of 12 of them. Each of her slender legs was covered with a layer of needle-like fur. Looking at it, one's scalp couldn't help but feel slightly numb. Each of its 12 legs had a small suction cup that allowed it to suck on anything. Xiao Mu subconsciously squirmed behind Emolien, her eyes vigilantly gazing at the human-headed spider that was sucking on the ceiling. Hiss! That guy let out a prelude to an attack. Suddenly, it pounced down from the ceiling and opened its mouth to spray a green mucus at the 2 of them. That liquid fell to the ground and immediately corroded a hole. It could be seen that the poison was very strong. After the human-headed spider realized that its attack had missed, it quickly retreated a few steps. It was very human-like and vigilantly looked at the 2 of them. Arbor made a prompt decision. He tore an attack talisman and threw it in its direction. Chapter 29:32. But when the attack talismans hit the human-headed spider's body, it was like scratching an itch. There were no sparks at all, and it didn't even leave a white mark on its body. Arbor hurriedly looked up at Emolien. This monster shouldn't have already entered the god realm, right? Emolien pulled him back. This thing's body is full of hidden weapons. You should first open the defensive barrier. Before he could finish his sentence, the human-headed spider launched another attack at them. This time, while it was spitting out mucus from its mouth, its 12 slender spider legs were moving forward very quickly. Its movements were very fast, and in a flash, it had already arrived in front of Prince Emo. The monster's 4 forelimbs were like sickles, cutting in all directions. With a slight twist, it cut towards Arbor's neck. Emolien pulled his Jojo over, and a long staff suddenly appeared in his hand. He swiftly blocked the human-headed spider's slender legs. The slender legs kept twisting in front of Emolien, desperately trying to stab at her. Emolien flipped his hand, and several balls of purple flames abruptly landed on the human-headed spider's 2 slender legs. The long, hairy legs crackled as they were being roasted by the purple flames. Suddenly, the hairs on the legs shot out like steel needles. Emolien had already been on guard, and when those steel needles were thrown over, they were blocked by a barrier formed by the purple flames. With a light flip of his hand, the Raven Moon Sword in Emolien's hand once again emitted a jet-black luster. A majestic sword intent appeared in the air, and with unparalleled speed and power, it cut towards the hairy leg spider in front of them. This human-headed spider was also a clever one, and it immediately felt that the situation was very bad. The sword intent that burst out from this guy in front of it almost instantly made it timid, and it immediately wanted to retreat. But it was a pity that this was a huge cage surrounded by iron fences. Where could this human-headed spider retreat to? When it retreated, it realized that its path of retreat had already been blocked. This huge sword in tent was right in front of it, and a black flame was burning behind it. It burned quietly but brilliantly, and the thick black color made it tremble from the bottom of its heart. Hiss, 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 hiss. The creature roared loudly. Its 12 slender legs were hesitant to move forward or backward. It was difficult for it to move forward. Mo Yin naturally wouldn't give it much time to consider. She waved her right hand slightly, and a majestic sword in tent descended from the sky, rapidly approaching the human-headed spider. Hiss! The human-headed spider let out a mournful cry. Arbor came out from behind Mo Yin and stole a glance at the thing. He was so disgusted that goosebumps appeared all over his body. This thing was still spitting out green mucus from its mouth. Because its chin was being forcefully pressed against by Mo Yin's sword in tent, every ball of mucus dripped onto its body due to the distance. The human-headed spider, with a body of copper skin and iron bones, was actually corroding itself to the point of howling. Arbor looked at this scene and couldn't help but want to laugh. The sword in tent that Mo Yin had summoned was using a slow speed that was visible to the naked eye to slowly disintegrate this human-headed spider. Its little red eyes revealed a look of fear. Originally, it wanted to shrink back a little, but the blazing black fire behind it caused it to shiver all over. It clearly looked like a faint wisp of black flame, but it had such power. I coughed, or just ate loquat paste. I can't take it anymore. Chapter 29:33. His. In just a moment, she discovered to her horror that her 2 slender legs had been completely melted by the pitch-black sword in tent. Its remaining 7 or 8 legs couldn't help but tremble. They watched as its body disappeared inch by inch under the huge black sword. Finally, the sword in tent pierced through the human-headed spider's body and sent it flying. It heavily smashed through several iron fences. It flew out and crashed into the wall of the stone room, creating a loud rumbling sound. A faint black flame burned on its face, causing it to let out heart-wrenching screams. After a few minutes, the man's cries slowly died down. Only a pile of black powder was left in the corner. Nothing else could be seen. Just as the 2 of them flew out of the thin fence with a hole in it, they saw the entire roof of the stone room collapse. A loud bang resounded throughout the entire stone chamber. Between the stone ceiling and the ground, there was not the slightest gap. If he didn't have the ability to escape from it, he would have turned into minced meat by now. The 2 of them hurriedly left this stone room and walked into the stone room next door. These 3 stone chambers were connected. The human-headed arachnid's room was the largest stone room in the center. There were 2 smaller stone rooms on the left and right. As soon as Arbor stepped in, he quickly retreated. Even though he blocked his 5 senses, he was still shocked by the disgusting scene in front of him. This was the place where the heavenly fate created people. As soon as he walked in, he saw strings of people hanging on the walls. It would be more appropriate to call them puppets now. Just like hanging sausages and bacon, these people were also hung on the 3 walls in different categories. Their limbs were all twisted and grotesque. Although everyone was breathing weakly, it was obvious that they were no longer conscious. There were men and women among them. There were even 4 or 5 old people and a child who was missing a leg. The scene was almost too horrible to look at. Even someone like Arbor, who had experienced 2 lifetimes, felt extremely miserable. He didn't want to look at it a second time. Moreover, the little monk was only a child. It was better to avoid such a bloody scene. The layout of the 2 stone rooms on the left and right were basically the same. In the middle were rows of medicinal troughs, and beside them were piles of inferior herbs. Inside a black medicine furnace, a tiny flame was burning. There was a small bowl next to it, and there was still some residue left in it. Mo Yin sighed and looked at the people hanging on the wall. She reached out and pulled the little girl to her side. "Let's go. Ask Mr. Su to take over and deal with these people." Even if these test subjects were saved, they wouldn't be able to live for long. When the time came, let them die with some dignity. Could it be that the mutated medicine made by Tianyun was extracted from some animals and plants? It shouldn't be that simple. Mo Yin shook her head. But from the looks of it, they're still improving their medicine. That human-headed spider should also be one of Tian Yun's test subjects. Whether it was in terms of strength or speed, the human-headed spider was undoubtedly a success. It was very powerful, but it had also become a mindless, zombie-like monster. What was the point of such a change? This should be the improved medicine that they concocted. Emolien lowered his eyes. Chapter 29:34. After pondering for a moment, Emolien continued. The liquid used to create zombies and special ability users should be considered as the basic liquid. First, eliminate a portion of the weak, then convert a portion of the strong into special ability users. After that, use this improved liquid to create an all-round strong person. So, then we can realize the dream of ordinary people to become strong. Arbor nodded her little head vigorously. What is this Sky Fate organization thinking? They spent so much time and effort for so many years just to fulfill a dream? Let's not care about what they think for now. Since they can't figure it out, there's no need to waste their brain power to think about these time-consuming things. When Arbor and Emolien came out of the passage and returned to the ice tree, the little monk immediately stopped knocking on the wooden fish and walked over to Arbor's side with his short legs. Two small hands gripped onto Arbor's skirt. The little monk's round eyes emitted a nervous light. Benefactress, are you all right? Were you attacked by the Een energy? This little monk has a heavenly protective talisman here. It can expel evil and avoid danger. It can also dissolve the Een energy, the little guy mumbled as he took out a crumpled yellow talisman from his little pocket. Arbor couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth, silently taking the broken talisman that he held up high. Looking at it, she asked expressionlessly, "Where did you get this?" Speaking of this, the little monk couldn't help but sigh, pretending to be an old man. Master Abbot gave it to me. Back then, it was the treasure of our temple. This bald Donkey Kong Een, he even tricked a little kid. What kind of heavenly protective talisman is this? It's a fake talisman with no talisman power at all. Who knows where the old monk got it from? How is it, benefactress? Do you feel a wave of warm steam coming out? Arbor shook her head, bending down to pick up the child, but Prince Immo snatched him from the side. The little monk Kong glared at Emolien in dissatisfaction. Benefactress, don't always steal benefactress Kong. In the emptiness of the benefactress, Emolien felt a little uncomfortable listening to him. She raised her hand and poked his bald head. You talk too much. She casually stuffed a small steamed bun into his mouth, successfully blocking the chatterbox Kong's little mouth. When we get back, let Knight Darkshong and the others bring Mr. Su and move everything in this stone room back to carefully study it. They had never seized so many drugs or test subjects before. This made Su Shuatao and the others busy for quite a while. Arbor didn't understand, but he didn't ask much. He thought that the Mr. Su that Emolien mentioned should be a talented person. What about him? Prince Emo lowered his head and saw the old village chief lying on the ground, glaring at the two of them with venomous eyes. Just now, when he went down for a stroll, he almost forgot about the culprit. As soon as Emolien opened her mouth, the surrounding villagers became agitated, clamoring, "Kill him, kill him, kill him." The old village chief lay on the ground, his eyes staring at Arbor, staring at her. That gaze made Emolien a little angry, and she kicked him to the side. "If you stare at my JoJo again, I'll dig your eyeballs out." Arbor didn't feel anything uncomfortable. Anyway, the village chief in front of her could only stare at her with those dead fish eyes. Chapter 29:35. Emolien was still hesitating whether to kill him or wait for Mr. Su to come over and bring him over for research. She saw several people rush forward, punching and kicking the old village chief without saying a word. It was obvious that the villagers who were deceived by him hated the old village chief to the core. At this moment, they really wanted to eat his blood and bite his flesh. Arbor looked at this group of angry villagers and sighed. He turned his head and said, "Let's go." Emolien nodded, turned her head, and lightly ordered, "You two take some people and rescue those people who are hanging on the wall." When Chia and Dark Shang bring Mr. Su over, hand over all the tools in the stone room to him. Yes. Two responses immediately sounded from a place where no one was around. Not long after Mo Lien and the others left, several black-clothed youths led people down the stone stairs. Not long after, the entire underground village was filled with the cries of the villagers. Those who were rescued and on the verge of death, none of them were spared. Almost all of them were exhaling more than they were inhaling. These people were the relatives and friends of the villagers. All these years, because of the old village chief's deceit, they all felt like they were in a dream. They didn't suspect the old village chief at all, but they didn't expect that the most honest person was the monster who stole their family members. As long as they thought of the words of those youths, they understood that their family members were used as test subjects in that evil stone room all these years and suffered endless suffering. They couldn't help but feel sad. The atmosphere in the entire underground village was very depressing. Sigh. Lu Zheng couldn't help but sigh. I really didn't expect that after us two old brothers muddled through so many years, the world would have such earth-shaking changes. Tianyin, this organization, didn't know when it appeared. In the 3 continents, how many places like this underground village base were there? It couldn't be that their bases were everywhere, and there were eyes everywhere, coldly looking at them in the gloomy darkness. Thinking of this, Chen Shi couldn't help but shrug his shoulders and tremble slightly. Seeing the villagers hugging the corpses of their loved ones and crying bitterly, to be honest, they felt rather uncomfortable. They were all humans, but the Sky Fate organization actually treated them like puppets and manipulated them. This was truly perverted. Arbor shook his head. If only they were a little bit more cautious. If he had been vigilant from the beginning, perhaps he wouldn't have been fooled by an old village chief. Let's have him settle down properly. Mo Lien squeezed Xiao Mu's small hand as he looked up at the rosy clouds that towered into the clouds. They had been tossing and turning for the whole night, and the sky was starting to brighten. The rosy clouds peak in front of him seemed to be bathed in a layer of milky white light, exuding a holy white light. Clouds rose, and white mist filled the air. The faintly discernible peaks of the mountains were like young girls covered in white gauze, graceful and graceful. The rosy cloud's peak was the tallest peak in the middle, and there were 12 other peaks surrounding it. A silvery white waterfall poured down from the rosy cloud's peak, like 10,000 horses galloping, and the roaring sound of water could be heard from far away. Whoosh, whoosh. Before Arbor could react, he saw 2 eggs hurriedly flying out of the paradise, jumping and cheering toward the waterfall. Chapter 29:36. This place was this good? Arbor blinked and turned to look at her husband. Even little Baian's egg could sense the rich spirit energy here and impatiently flew out of the paradise on its own. With 2 flaps, it dashed straight into that waterfall. Lu Zheng jumped in fright and hastily shouted, "Second Sect Master, pay attention. That waterfall on Red Cloud Peak looks like it's filled with spirit energy, but it's actually not. Second Sect Master, the waterfall is actually filled with holy power, so we don't dare to rashly jump in and try. Hurry and bring your eggs back, or else we'll really lose everything." Emolien's mouth twitched inexplicably. What was going on? Why did his words give people the urge to beat this Chen Qi to death? The little stoic expressionlessly glanced at them. "My 2 eggs haven't been able to hatch. If they can hatch in this waterfall, then it'll really be excellent." Chen Qi and Lu Zheng looked at each other in dismay. "Second Sect Master, what are these 2 eggs?" "Holy Beast Baian's eggs." The 2 old men were only casually asking, but the answer they received almost made them drop their jaws. It couldn't be, right? This little fellow was carrying 2 Holy Beast Baian's eggs with her? Look at those fist-sized eggs hopping into the waterfall and roaming around with incomparable joy. How enviable was her appearance. This waterfall couldn't really cleanse her entire body and absorb holy power at the same time, right? Seeing that the old man Chen Qi was itching to give it a try, Arbor expressionlessly said, "Let's go to Red Cloud Peak first." The two people instantly wilted and turned around to look at Xiaomu. The little stoic muttered in a low voice, "They're already so old, yet they still don't know how to be calm. They're like two eggs and still want to hop back and forth. It's simply hilarious." Chen Qi and Lu Zheng looked at each other. The little stoic spoke so loudly that they could all hear it. "Okay." The four people swiftly ascended Red Cloud Peak with the little monk. When Chen Qi saw the palace with a glazed roof, green tiles, and a mottled outer wall, his eyes couldn't help but brim with tears. "Yes, it's here, second sect leader. This is the location chosen by our Xuanji school's first-generation master." Chen Qi began to cry. When the old man cried, Lu Zheng also thought about how he had wasted so many years. If he took all of it, he could accompany his junior martial sister to travel around, or he could stay at Red Cloud's Peak and continue to develop the sect. It would be much more meaningful than wasting so many years doing nothing. Arbor rubbed the little monk's head. The small monk then took out two square handkerchiefs from his small pocket. He handed one to Chen Qi and the other to Lu Zheng and said seriously, "Benefactors, don't cry. You two aren't the most miserable people in the world. Compared to those poor villagers just now, you should know. A healthy body with 4 limbs is more beautiful than anything else." Just like that, Chen Qi and Lu Zheng's little bit of nostalgia for the sect that had just been brewing was interrupted by the little monk. Arbor found it a bit funny and lowered his head to rub the little monk's bald head. He turned to Chen Qi and Lu Zheng and said, "I want to leave the 6 mountain peaks on the left for the Holy Water sect to use. I will use a formation to separate the 2 sections. This part will be the Xuanji School's territory, and the other will be the Holy Water sect's territory. What do you think?" Chen Qi expressed that he didn't have any objections and nodded before saying something heart-wrenching. "Our Xuanji School only has 3 people in total. Second sect leader, do as you wish. Bye. Wait until I get better and return to normal." Chapter 29:37. Arbor was instantly speechless. Although these 2 old men were indeed speaking the truth, they were too blunt. If a sect only had 3 people, including the sect master, people would probably laugh their heads off if they heard about it. "Second sect master, you know how to set up formations?" Once Lu Zheng mentioned formations, his interest in conversation was piqued. Arbor swept him a glance and silently summoned the mechanism diagram from his conscious. "I'll set up a simple Great Barrier formation between the left and right mountain peaks. What do you think?" Lu Zheng wanted to cry a bit. He had painstakingly created this mechanism diagram for many years, pouring his heart and soul into it. Each of the 18 formation diagrams inside was the best of the best. He originally wanted to show off to Chen Qi when he sparred with him, but when he thought of this, he inwardly vomited blood again. He forced a bitter expression and said, "This place is too big. If I want to set up a barrier formation, this little formation diagram probably won't be of much use." "Oh, then you do it." Xiaomu silently put away that matrix map and went with the flow to say this. "Lian, let's go eat. Thank you for your trouble, Elder Lu. I'll give you 4 hours to set up the Great Barrier Formation." Sir Jojo expressionlessly walked past the old man and turned to clench his small fist at him. "Work hard." Lu Zheng was stupefied. On the side, Chen Qi couldn't resist bursting out in laughter. Lu Zheng's deflated appearance was truly too hilarious. He had been old brothers with this old fellow for several hundred years, but he had never seen him so helpless and deflated. As expected, the little stoic sect master was a talent. She could infuriate Lu Zheng, this old man, to the point of hopping about with just a few words. The 2 of them pushed open the door and walked into the palace whose outer walls were rather mottled. Inside the empty main hall, light red gauze curtains hung everywhere. As the cold wind drifted in from outside the window, the gauze curtains fluttered gently. Arbor pulled Emo Yin around the main hall for a stroll. The furnishings in the hall were also quite old, and they looked quite exquisite. Arbor pulled Emo Yin along and strolled around the back of the palace. The Xuanji Palace was quite big. As long as they found some people to repair a little and change some clean living equipment, they would be able to move in directly. Xiao Mu thought of those two idle sect elders and decided to hand over the work of repairing and purchasing items to those two to handle. Achoo, achoo. Chen Qi sneezed twice, rubbed his nose, and walked to the side. From his vantage point, he could only see a waterfall that looked like a silver dragon descending rapidly. The two eggs were jumping and rolling in the pool under the waterfall, as if they were very comfortable and kept rubbing against each other. Chen Qi could not help but click his tongue in wonder. He turned back and continued to watch Lu Zheng set up the isolation formation. According to the second sect master's intention, after the two sects were isolated, the rosy clouds peak in the middle would be the hub connecting the two sections. They would open up a path on the side for people to come and go. This path was far away from the Xuanji Palace. Even if people came and went, it would not affect the palace. Lu Zheng leaped into the air. His palms were covered with dense saint energy. Nobody could see how he moved his arms, but one by one, huge boulders were moved from the mountain peaks in all directions. Following there were flowers, trees, branches, sand, and so on, dancing in the air. One after another, large trees with twisted roots were sucked in by his palms and transplanted here. Chapter 29:38. When Arbor walked over with a unique little food box and a piece of apple, her eyes lit up when she saw the scenery in front of her. Great Elder Lu was indeed a formation master who had lived for hundreds of years. In less than 2 hours, he had actually changed the appearance of Rosy Cloud's Peak. Rosy Cloud's Peak was now divided into yin and yang by him using flowers, trees, and stones. The formation plates were buried in the four corners. The Xuanji Palace where Arbor lived was located facing the sun. Not only was there plenty of light, but it was also modified to be warm in winter and cool in summer. The path in the middle was completely blocked off with flowers and trees. While she was eating, Great Elder Lu had transplanted the entire bamboo forest from one of the mountain peaks to this place. In this way, the Xuanji Palace was completely located in the depths of the bamboo forest and wouldn't be disturbed by the passage at all. As for the passage connecting the two sects, Great Elder Lu had also made it very imposing. Not only did he use large stones to build a stone bridge, but he also introduced a waterfall that meandered along the stone bridge. The two paths were filled with the fragrance of plants, birds, and flowers. In the middle was a small bridge with flowing water. It was very unique. Arbor was very satisfied with Great Elder Lu's skill in setting up formations. Although her face was still paralyzed, the little fellow walked over and placed a food box in front of Elder Lu. She said expressionlessly, "There's a pot of plum blossom wine inside." Elder Lu hurriedly took the food box, removed the veil, and chuckled as he took his food and sat to the side. Chen Qi saw this and hurried over. He couldn't help but sigh as he ate. The food cooked by the second-generation sect master is really mediocre, but the wine he makes is really good. Lu Zheng nodded. Beside him, he couldn't help but open his mouth and crawl up from the ground. Chen Qi also hurriedly stood up and turned to look. He couldn't help but reveal the same shocked expression as Lu Zheng. He saw Arbor standing on the stone bridge. With a move of her finger, pieces of glowing white jade talismans flew out from her inner world. The isolation talisman formation was set on top of the isolation formation set up by Elder Lu. Once it was added, the mountain peaks on both sides became more and more humid. The visibility of cultivators was almost no more than 1 meter. After Arbor finished setting up the isolation array on both sides, he began to set up 2 mystic guiding array glyphs. These 2 mystic guiding talisman matrices could endlessly absorb all the spiritual energy within a radius of several hundred kilometers before distributing it to the Xuanji sect and the Holy Water sect. Qiao, Xiao Mu instructed, "Go plant that shielding tree." All right. A little treant suddenly jumped out from Paradise Planet, carrying 2 main branches of the essence, concealing tree on its small shoulders. Behind him, there was also a little water baby and a little dirt lump jumping around. Master Silver, let's go nourish this shielding tree and make it grow faster." Arbor nodded and watched the 3 of them leave through the tunnel. Once this isolation glyph array was activated, it would be impossible to open this passageway that connected the two sects unless it was someone with a key. Arbor held a jade talisman in his hand, which was the key to open the isolation array. She could create a key like this with a casual drawing. She had as many as she wanted. The Holy Water sect still had to live their own lives. All the senior sisters needed to continuously train and grow in order to keep up with the cultivators of the Divine Province. After setting up the mystic guiding talisman formation, what made Lu Zheng and Chen Qi's jaws drop was that this wasn't the end. The two of them couldn't help but feel heartache for the second-generation sect master when they saw countless jade talismans flying out her sleeves endlessly. Chapter 2939. For 539 double defense array, how many jade talismans would this consume? If this continued, wouldn't they use up all the jade talismans that they had saved up for decades in one go? The two of them stood there and stared at Arbor, who was setting up the array, with complicated gazes. This time, Arbor was going to set up a defense array around the 13th peak, and it was a double defense array. This defense array needed to be set up around the 6 peaks on the left and another one on the 6 peaks on the right. Then an outer layer of defense array glyphs would be set up around the entire peak. The amount of defensive talismans consumed would be at a jaw-dropping level. Chen Qi didn't know how many talismans he had silently counted in his heart. He realized that the second-generation faction leader was simply a madman. Oh no, a monster. How can an ordinary person have so many talismans on them? The second-generation faction leader must have used up all the defensive talismans that he had accumulated for 3 generations in one go. If he used so many defensive talismans to fight someone, he would probably be able to exhaust the enemy for 10 days and 8 nights, hiding in the defensive array glyphs and not coming out, angering the enemy to death. Thinking of this, Lu Zheng and Chen Qi couldn't help but shudder. Terrifying. The second-generation faction leader's spending was really too frightening. Chen Qi felt that when he saw Lu Zheng set up the Flowerstone array, it was already shocking enough. But he didn't expect that the second-generation faction leader's move would be even more shocking and extraordinary. When Chen Qi silently counted the number of jade talismans consumed to 6,844, he couldn't even maintain the expression of shock on his face. It was almost completely replaced by horror, and his mouth even opened in a comical manner. Mo Yin glanced at the two of them, then directly shifted his gaze away, no longer looking at the two silly old men. His gaze naturally and attentively fell on Jojo, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously curled into a faint smile. Every time he saw Jojo throw talismans, he felt that it was a kind of visual enjoyment. The way he threw talismans was simply too beautiful, and he threw out so many talismans at once without even blinking. He was really too high-spirited. Arbor spent a full day and night on this double defense array glyphs. It wasn't until dawn the next day that Arbor let out a sigh of relief and lowered his arms. Her eyes looked as if they had been washed by clear water, bright and clean. When she turned her head and met Mo Yin's gaze, she couldn't help but run over to him. Mo Yin naturally hurried forward and caught her sprinting figure. "Why are you running?" Arbor grinned. He turned around and saw the two old faces of Chen Qi and Lu Zheng. Both of them were expressionless. This expression looked strangely familiar. Arbor blinked and couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong with you two?" Although Lu Zheng did not express his stance, it was as if a mountain torrent was pouring out from the bottom of his heart, roaring and roaring nonstop. Chen Qi, on the other hand, glanced at her several times. After some deliberation, he asked, "Second Sect Master, are all 3 generations of your family talisman masters?" Arbor smirked. "You can say that, but what does those 3 generations of talisman masters have to do with her? You've taken out all the defensive jade talismans accumulated by your family's 3 generations and used them all up in a day." Chen Qi said expressionlessly. Arbor couldn't help but feel helpless. How were these talismans accumulated by her family's 3 generations? These were just talismans that she drew bit by bit in her spare time. They weren't worth much. Chapter 2940. Of course, Arbor had also run to Fish Orchid Planet to draw thousands of defensive talismans while she was eating. Only then did she manage to gather enough talismans. Blinking his large eyes, Sir Jojo turned to Imo Lien and said, "Lien, the blank jade talismans have all been used up. It's all right. I've already instructed them to speed up the production. I'll have them send them to the academy in the next 2 days." Arbor nodded her little head vigorously. Most of the defensive talismans around her had been used up, and she only had about 100 defensive talismans left. It was really too little. Chen Qi and Lu Zheng perked up their ears to eavesdrop on their conversation. They couldn't help but look at each other silently and ask in unison, "Second Sect Master, you didn't draw all these talismans, did you?" Second Sect Master was a strange talisman master. Wasn't he a little different from other talisman masters? Other talisman masters would dawdle for an entire afternoon and successfully draw 1 or 2 talismans. It was already considered good. But Second Sect Master had taken out 8,688 defensive jade talismans just now. Don't ask them how they knew. They had all been counting silently in their hearts. Based on the average talisman master's speed of drawing 2 talismans a day, they could only draw 700 talismans a year. Second Sect Masters, 8,000 jade talismans. Wouldn't other people take more than 10 years to draw them? Was this normal? Xiao Mu gazed at the 2 people in bewilderment. Before they could continue asking, she said, "Elders, that Jade Star Palace of mine seems to have been around for quite some time already, right?" The 2 elders' eyelids twitched violently. Now that this sect leader has returned, repairing the residence has become the first priority. She turned her head to look at the 2 old men. "Go find a few craftsmen and renovate the palace inside and out. Change all the furniture that should be changed. If I have time, I'll come back and stay for a while." In the future, this would be her other residence outside of the Eastern Palace. Chunxi opened his mouth and found that the words that came out of his mouth had become an obedient response. Okay, my ass. He was an elder of the Xuanji sect. When did he become a servant? Since when did purchasing supplies and repairing the palace become his job? Chunxi was speechless. He turned his head and glared at Arbor. After Arbor finished dealing with the double defensive array, he pinched his fingers and a rumbling sound came from outside the defensive array. Now, the talisman formation that she had set up could be activated according to her thoughts. The opening and closing of the talisman all depended on her handprint. There was no need to use the jade talisman as a key. Arbor and Imo Lien crossed the stone bridge side by side and arrived at one of the peaks. "Second Martial Uncle, are you coming out now?" Arbor asked Yang Shirong a few times, and when he heard her say yes, he pulled her out of the Fish Orchid Planet. Yang Shirong had already found out from Little Tree that Arbor had chosen an excellent location for the sect. She was extremely excited. The moment she stepped out, Yang Shirong felt an abundance of spiritual energy surging around her body. Next, she felt that the scenery in front of her was picturesque. Every peak was like a beautiful garden. There were mountains, rivers, stones, and trees. She just needed to find a few craftsmen and polish them. "Second Martial Uncle, how about we settle down here in the future?" The spiritual energy here was very rich. The spiritual energy that had been drawn in from hundreds of kilometers away was all absorbed by the mystic energy guiding talisman formation. In less than a second, the 13 peaks with the red clouds peak as the center were surrounded by dense spiritual energy. Chapter 2941. More than half of the spiritual energy absorbed by the mystic energy guiding talisman matrix from a radius of several hundred kilometers was drawn into the defensive array surrounding the 13 peaks of Rosy Clouds Peak. The remaining spiritual energy was truly unable to be absorbed by the 13 peaks, and it looked like it was about to slowly dissipate again. However, Sir Jojo adhered to the principle of frugality and called the sapling Chio back. He had it absorb the remaining spiritual energy to replenish the spiritual energy consumed by the paradise. Yang Shirong excitedly strolled around the mountain peak. She held Arbor's small hand and repeatedly nodded as she said, "Jojo, You really have a good eye for choosing a location. Judging from the spiritual energy gathered around this place, it must be a naturally formed spirit domain. Arbor pursed his small lips. In reality, this spirit domain might not have had so much spiritual energy inside before. It was mainly due to the two mystic energy guiding talisman matrices and the defensive array surrounding it that all the spiritual energy was locked inside. An endless stream of spiritual energy was absorbed by the mystic energy guiding talisman matrix, and very little spiritual energy dissipated. As a result, the spiritual energy density of this entire mountain peak could be said to have reached its peak. Arbor released Jiangqi, Yugue, and the other senior sisters from the paradise. Chun-Chi, who was originally calmly drinking wine on the side, abruptly spat out a mouthful of wine. Fuck, he never knew that his second-generation sect master had so many people by her side. These people couldn't have all been stored inside her storage talisman, right? Yang Shirong already had some understanding of seniors Chun-Chi and Lu Zheng in Paradise Planet. She walked up and cupped her hands in greeting. Seniors, Yang Shirong from the Holy Water sect greets you. When Chun-Chi and Lu Zheng heard the little stoic sect master call her Ant Master, they knew she was naturally close to them. Hence, they didn't put on airs and cupped their hands with a smile, greeting Yang Shirong. Sparks of curiosity still danced in Chun-Chi's eyes. The second-generation sect master stored all of you inside the storage talisman? Isn't it stuffy to be cooped up inside the storage talisman all day long? Yang Shirong thought about it, but still said, I'll let Jojo tell you personally. When Chun-Chi and Lu Zheng heard this, they knew better than to ask any further. Arbor walked up to them and pointed at the senior sisters who were excitedly planning the mountain peaks and how to build them. He said to Yang Shirong, second Ant Master, the Holy Water sect shouldn't lack any of the 3 peaks. Let's just establish 3 peaks, okay? However, if senior sisters wish to study together, they can also gather on another mountain peak. Yang Shirong naturally nodded in agreement. The 4th peak over there will be named Learning Peak. If everyone wants to cultivate together, we can go there. Arbor nodded. Let's call the 5th mountain the Sky Peak. It's time for our Maple Pavilion to return. Yang Shirong had already visited the Maple Pavilion on Paradise Planet. When she heard this, she looked at the child with emotion. The Maple Pavilion had a total of 7 floors, and there were many treasures inside. Jojo had owned the Maple Pavilion for so long, but he had not touched a single thing. This child mind was too pure. Arbor had her own set of principles for handling matters. No one should think of coveting what belonged to her. She wouldn't take more than what didn't belong to her. Since the items inside the sect were passed down from the Holy Water sect, they naturally belonged to everyone. Now that the Holy Water sect had reopened its doors to accept disciples, the Maple Pavilion naturally had to return them to their rightful owners. Yang Shirong pushed back the pine bamboo jade bracelet on her wrist. This key is still with you. Chapter 2942. This is what your master left for you, so it's yours. Yang Shirong pats her little hand. In the future, if a disciple performs well in the sect, we'll follow the rules and let her go to Maple Pavilion to choose spiritual techniques, spiritual weapons, and so on. Arbor thinks for a moment and says there are quite a few profound-level mystic weapons inside. It's time to change them. She takes out a storage talisman and hands it to Yang Shirong. Second Uncle Master, when are you going to tidy it up? This is half of the compensation given by the Mu family's first branch. I didn't look through the mess. What spirit stones, spiritual techniques, spiritual weapons, and medicinal herbs? I reckon they're not of the best quality. Just may do with it for now. Yang Shirong twitches her mouth. She doesn't know if Jojo feels guilty when he says this. She feels that the Mu family's first branch must be bleeding from the bottom of their hearts when they handed over the compensation. Little junior sister, Fong Su, the little cannon, runs over excitedly and points to the back of the mountain. There are several rows of caves on the back of the mountain. The spiritual energy inside is extremely dense. Do you want to go take a look? These fellows ran one round all over the mountains and plains, and actually already found several good cultivation places. Seeing that they are in high spirits, Arbor nods and follows them. Sure enough, there are a series of small caves formed naturally on the back of the mountain. It's just big enough for one person to sit cross-legged and cultivate. Eh, Emolien exclaims and steps forward to look up. She can't help but mutter to herself, "This place can actually form a natural cultivation place. Hey, it's really not bad. Look, there's a wind gap here. The wind comes from there and naturally turns a corner, bringing with it surging spiritual energy. As it blows for a long time, the spiritual energy keeps seeping in and actually formed many small caves." Chin-Shi points in the direction of the back of the mountain. The passage they just passed by is relatively narrow, like a slender gourd. When they turn around, they immediately see an open space on the mountain. This cultivation place has the densest spiritual energy among the 6 peaks. It's really good to cultivate here. This is the first peak. Yang Shirong makes a decision. Then, they led the group of disciples and named the 2 peaks to the left and right as the second peak and the third peak. Sky Peak and Learning Peak were neighbors. The last peak was named Divine Water Peak by everyone and was used as the main peak. Yang Shirong happily pulled all the disciples to planning to first plant a row of bamboo forest on the main peak. The little stoic opened her small mouth. She thought of the bamboo forest Lu Zheng transplanted at the top of Red Cloud Peak, then looked at the bare land on Holy Water Peak. It was obvious that a row of bamboos had been planted here before Lu Zheng rubbed his nose. "Second Sect Master, do you want to plant a plum blossom outside the Xuanji Palace?" "That's fine too." The little stoic nodded and casually said, "We'll return to the academy now. Elders, don't forget your mission. Hurry up and find the 101 first-generation disciples. Our Holy Water sect has at least 200 people." The little stoic said expressionlessly, "Your Xuanji sect should at least give me 20 people." Was this a high requirement? It wasn't high at all right? "Second Sect Master, don't worry. After we finish repairing the Xuanji Palace, we'll descend the mountain and immediately search everywhere. I believe that we'll definitely find many disciples in time." Chapter 2943. Arbor grunted and turned to look at Yang Shirong and the others. "Second Martial Ant, if there's anything, we can contact each other through the transmission talisman." "Okay." Yang Shirong smiled and nodded. "It will take some time for the sect construction to be completed. Don't worry about us. You can go and do your own things. Little junior sister, take care. Little junior sister, if you're tired from studying in the academy, come back and play for a few days." Everyone gave instructions at once. Yang Shirong then said, "After our sect is finished, I'll bring them to the great north-facing forest to gain experience." Arbor nodded. Gaining experience was definitely an essential part of cultivation. Many Shioja who had grown up in large aristocratic families would suffer great losses in battle because they did not have enough experience. After giving Yang Shirong and the others a few more simple instructions, Arbor then went to the waterfall with Emolien to look for the 2 swanny eggs that were happily swimming in the water. The little monk reached out to hold the corner of Qiao Mu's skirt as he jogged with her on his short legs. "Benefactress, this young monk is unfamiliar with this place, so you mustn't abandon this young monk, okay? I didn't say I'd leave you behind." Arbor looked down at the little monk. "But if you return to the academy with me, wouldn't that be too eye-catching?" The little monk pursed his soft, diamond-shaped lips. His little handsome face was full of seriousness. Arbor saw his tense expression and couldn't help but want to laugh. She raised her hand to rub his head and said, "I'll send you to a good place. When you want to see me, you can come out and see me anytime. How's that?" When the little monk heard the first half of her sentence, he couldn't help but want to cry. After hearing the entire sentence, he couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. "Benefactress, don't go back on your words." Arbor waved her hand and had Little Tree bring the little monk into Paradise Planet first. Meanwhile, she and Emolien were standing above the waterfall, looking down at the 2 hickory eggs leaping about in the pool. "Come up," Arbor roared. After tossing around for so long, they still didn't hatch. She was happy for nothing. Whoosh, whoosh. Two rays of light, one black and one purple, flashed, and the two eggs quietly fell into Arbor's palm. Could it be due to the lack of saint energy? Arbor's eyes flickered as he looked at Mo Lien, who was standing beside him. Mo Lien nodded. That's very likely. Look at these two eggs. They have absorbed almost all of the scattered saint energy in the pool. It's obvious that they need the support of the saint power to break out of their shells. Arbor reached out and knocked on the two balls, then stroked them. Forget it. Let's not dwell on this for now. Above the three prefectures, even the deity domain was hard to find, let alone the saint domain, which was a treasure trove that could only be found by chance. Perhaps the place where rotten peach blossom had stayed before was a holy region. However, every time the venerable immortal talked about this place, his face looked as if he had eaten a fly. He always liked to use a simple word to summarize it: boring. What kind of place was this to make him so resentful, to the point where he used the word boring to describe the saint domain? Arbor took back the Swanee eggs. Emolien called out Little Seven. The two of them rode on the golden dragon and quickly returned to the academy. When Arbor went to the cultivation hall to cancel her leave, it was already the third day. Her two small eyebrows were knitted together as she thought about the two stingy instructors in the cultivation hall, who knew how they would deduct her contribution points. Chapter 2944. At this time, all the students in the various halls should be in class, so walking on the academy road was very quiet. After Mo Lien returned to the academy, no one knew what she was busy with. Arbor didn't follow up and ask, so she decided to go to the cultivation hall to cancel her leave. After all, 500 contribution points were deducted a day, so if she was late for a day, she would lose 500 more. Even though she had 30,000 contribution points left, she couldn't afford to lose 500 points a day like this. When she arrived at the cultivation hall's gate, Arbor's gaze suddenly fell on a person sitting in the middle of the lawn. This person was sitting in front of the cultivation hall's gate, lazily leaning against the back of the chair. His legs were very unruly, as if he was waiting for her here. But Arbor was very clear that she didn't know this person. She was probably a little face-blind, but her memory had never been that bad. She would at least have some impression of people she had met before. This young man in front of her, who she had no impression of, was probably someone she had never met before. Arbor walked straight to the teacher's office area, but unexpectedly, that person stretched out a long leg and blocked her way. Arbor's eyes narrowed dangerously. Her cold gaze was like a sharp arrow, suddenly shooting towards the man in the chair. Crown Princess, you've really made me wait for a long time. When Su Shihua saw this kind of gaze, he couldn't help but be slightly taken aback. Then, he returned to his lazy and unbridled appearance when they first met. What's the matter? Crown Princess probably doesn't know a small person like me. Su Shihua stood up and looked at her with a smile that wasn't a smile. This person had a fair and handsome face, and his appearance wasn't bad, but when he looked at people with his slender eyes, it clearly made people feel a little uncomfortable. This kind of sizing up gaze made it seem as if Arbor was a commodity in his eyes, which made Arbor unhappy. Indeed, I don't know you. Xiaomu coldly interrupted the latter half of his words. If all the cats and dogs in the world were like you, introducing themselves to me every time they stopped me on the road, then wouldn't I be busy to death? Su Shihua didn't expect that the little girl wouldn't give him any face. There was a hint of anger in his eyes as he sneered and said, I'm a senior of the cultivation hall. I just came out of seclusion 2 days ago. I've heard some people in the academy talk about the Crown Princess, and I feel that your skills should be pretty good. How about it? Are you interested in sparring with this, Su? That's good. Let me have a taste of the Crown Princess's skills. Su Shihua looked at the woman in front of him gloomily. If they were to make a move later, he would definitely ruthlessly humiliate this little girl. The little girl was still young, but her figure looked really good. Su Shihua's gaze wandered around Arbor's body, and his eyes revealed a bit of calculation and malice. Who asked her to humiliate his sister, Su Shi Tao, in the despondent pavilion? After Tao returned home, not only was his eldest brother grounded, but she was also tormented and almost died from illness. Arbor naturally saw the sparks of hatred dancing in Su Shihua's eyes, but she was still a bit puzzled. After all, she had long forgotten about the matter of Princess Tao in the despondent pavilion. How could she connect the two together? Arbor's eyes swept over him coldly. You really want to fight with me? This disdainful tone completely infuriated Su Shihua. Just because I call you the crown princess, you really think you're high and mighty. Your status hasn't been decided yet. Chapter 2945. To tell the truth, Arbor didn't want to pay attention to this idiot. She came to find an instructor to cancel her leave, so she didn't have the time to bicker with this idiot. Arbor immediately circled around his stool with small steps, unwilling to even spare him a glance out of the corner of her eye. Su Shihua was thoroughly enraged. He abruptly kicked the stool next to him and darted to the side, blocking in front of Arbor again. Ever since he became famous, no one had dared to be so impudent in front of him. So what if she was the crown princess? In this world, strength reigned supreme. His teacher had once said that he, Su Shihua, was destined to be a dragon among men and would certainly ascend to mystique venerable rank within 300 years. Ever since he entered this academy, he had always been admired because he had already reached the peak of the 15th level of the spirit realm at the mere age of 21. He didn't know how many female shoujo were rushing in front of him. Moreover, Su Shihua was the kind of man with a glib tongue. He usually played like a fish in water among female cultivators, and a number of women who wanted to become his partner could line up from the Imperial Academy all the way to the great north-facing forest. He had always thought highly of himself, so he simply couldn't tolerate Arbor's attitude toward him. The status of female cultivators in the upper 3 provinces truly wasn't high. Due to innate restrictions, only 10 or 20% of female cultivators could perfectly pass the 5 spirits reincarnation trial and break through to the god realm. In the eyes of Su Shihua and many male cultivators, female cultivators should obediently submit to men. This was in accordance with the rules of the upper 3 provinces. A stoic face like the little stoic, who could draw hatred wherever she went, immediately infuriated Su Shihua. He summoned a long saber with a blue watery glow from his conscience and slashed it in Arbor's direction without another word. Refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, Su Shihua's eyes flashed with a cold glint. You're merely a future crown princess whose status hasn't been confirmed, yet you dare to be so impudent in front of Senior. His Highness the Crown Prince truly doesn't know how to teach women. Su Shihua sneered. Since that was the case, then he would take His Highness the Crown Prince's place to properly teach this woman who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. He would teach her principle. In the upper 3 continents, identity didn't mean everything. The saber landed on the ground in the courtyard, leaving a long white mark. Su Shihua shouted angrily. The moment his saber slashed through the air, he couldn't help but frown slightly. How did that last dodge it? It was strange that he couldn't see her movements. However, even if he was slightly faster, there was no way he could escape from him. He was a level 15 Great Spirit Master and possessed 8 levels of the Water Spirit. For ordinary people, being able to comprehend 6 levels of the 5 spirit origins was already not bad. Of course, Su Shihua didn't know that what Arbor had comprehended was the source of holy water. It had long since surpassed the 9th level of spirit water. At this time, Su Shihua still had great confidence in himself. He raised the long saber in his hand and encircled the long saber with both hands, completely enveloping it. Immediately afterwards, he leaped forward and arrived in front of Qiao Mu. His eyes flashed, and the long saber slashed at the hem of her skirt. This despicable thing. Arbor glanced at him coldly and dodged his blade with extreme speed. You're courting death. This man's objective was too clear. Did he want to make a fool of Jojo? Did he want to seize the opportunity to rip apart her clothes and expose her to others? Haha, naive guy. Just let him suffer the consequences of his own actions. Chapter 2946. Xiao Mu's fury was completely enraged. Originally, she didn't want to cause so much trouble and just ignored this lowly man in front of her, who knew that when she wanted to settle the matter peacefully, the other party would keep pushing her. She, Arbor, had never been a person who was afraid of trouble. She just found it troublesome. However, since the other party wanted to die so badly, then she would fulfill his wish. Su Shihua felt that the aura of the girl in front of him had completely changed in an instant. Previously, she still had a lazy attitude. Now, she was like a little hedgehog with countless spikes all over her body. Her pair of cold eyes contained a fierce light as she coldly stared at him without blinking. This gaze made his heart inexplicably skip a beat. At the same time, he felt that he was actually frightened by the little girl's gaze. It was really intolerable. Su Shihua was a little angry from embarrassment. He couldn't help but sneer. Arbor, today let me teach you the principles of being a person. Don't be too ruthless in everything. Women should be more obedient. Don't force yourself to do everything. Su Shihua's words were full of contempt for the woman. His attitude was arrogant, and he raised his chin slightly, like a peacock with its tail open. She didn't know where he got the face to be so arrogant in front of her. Go die. Xiao Mu glared at him impatiently before throwing out two small, round, transparent balls with a flip of her hand. The commotion caused by Su Shihua's machete had already attracted the people who were in class in the cultivation hall. When Minter Ma rushed out with a group of students, he just happened to see Miss Qiao throw the two small transparent balls in Su Shihua's direction. Su Shihua smiled contemptuously. Part of the spiritual armor formed on his arm and blocked in front of him, intending to wave away the two small balls that were flying straight at him. Just two spiritual energy balls, and you want to show off in front of me? You're too naive, right? Su Shihua, get out of the way. Minter Ma's eyes narrowed and couldn't help but roar. What spiritual energy balls? Those were obviously God power, right? These were two godly power balls, all right? Two. Oh my God. She was indeed the crown princess of the divine land. She could casually throw out two priceless divine power balls. No, now wasn't the time to think about this problem, but everyone, get into formation. Open the defensive barrier. Defend, defend. The instructors shrieked. Everyone was in a state of panic as they activated their defensive spirit artifacts. Those who had spirit armor quickly formed a spirit armor to protect themselves. The instructors took a step forward and worked together to set up a large defensive barrier. At the same time, boom, boom, two thunder-like tremors resounded in the small courtyard of the cultivation hall, the sound piercing through the clouds. Even the students in the other halls who were in the middle of their lessons were shocked. In the armament refining branch, a thin and tall youth who was standing beside Immerse and carefully crafting a defensive profound weapon could not help but tremble and almost put a material into the weapon cauldron by mistake. Fuck! I was so scared that my hands were shaking. The young man mumbled. The sound seems to be coming from the direction of the refining hall. Instructor Zhang from the refining hall couldn't help but look out of the window. Immerse kept a weapon in the weapon cauldron. After greeting Instructor Zhang, she quickly walked out. He felt that such a big commotion should be caused by his JoJo. When Immerse thought of this, she couldn't help but want to cover her face. Chapter 2948. What happened? Immerse held back her laughter as she slowly walked towards her JoJo. Looking at the situation in front of him, was it really his JoJo who caused trouble again? Arbor glanced at him and silently put the two god power balls that she was about to throw back in her pocket. A fly flew in front of me and nagged me. It's fine now. He was probably beaten half to death and must have been taught a great lesson. What kind of girl should listen to a man obediently? This strange man actually jumped out of his own accord and wanted to teach her how to be a person? Then he should learn how to be a person first. Arbor smirked sarcastically and went forward to hold Immerse's hand. Suddenly thinking of something, Arbor hurriedly turned her head to look at Instructor Ma and said, I'm here to cancel my leave. Minter Ma was so angry that he didn't know where to vent. Before he could speak, he heard the little girl rebuke, The students of your academy are too outrageous. I'm here to cancel my leave, and he actually waited for me to come. Here, there, and here. He should pay for all the compensation. Arbor pointed at the floor tiles and the potted plants that were damaged during the fight. And the time I wasted, he should compensate me according to the price. What's his name again? Arbor finally remembered to ask for the person's name. Instructor Ma and the others didn't know what to say to her. They had seen the guilty party complaining first, but they had never seen such a vile act. This little girl smashed the person until he fell into a hole and couldn't climb out, and she still asked for compensation. The compensation isn't much, just 100,000 spirit coins. Qi Xianxian tugged at her sleeves and reminded her, Xiao Xiao, the Academy's compensation is converted into contribution points. Oh, Arbor looked at Instructor Ma expressionlessly. Then transfer 3,000 contribution points from that person's account to me. He got off easy. After that, she couldn't help but ask again, what's his name? Mentor Ma and the others all felt that encountering this guy was simply bad luck since their ancestors. Hua Hua. At this moment, a voice came from outside the courtyard. He saw a man in a royal blue robe with his black hair neatly combed up. He quickly walked through the door and arrived at the edge of the pit in a few steps. At this moment, Su Shihua was also relying on his own strength to crawl to the edge of the pit bit by bit. When he looked up, he saw his elder brother, Immerse Shikong, looking at him with concern. Su Shihua suddenly felt a stomach full of bitterness and grievances. All of it surged into his heart, and he wished he could cry out loud. At this moment, he no longer had that high-spirited appearance from before. He looked like a bald beggar. There was a bald patch on the top of his head, and not even a blade of grass could grow on it. He also felt a burning pain on his face. He couldn't have been disfigured by that ruthless girl, right? At the thought that his face might be ruined by the other party, Su Shihua couldn't help but panic. He kept raising his hand to touch his face. Although he was a man and didn't need to pay too much attention to his appearance, it didn't mean that he could accept a disfigured face. Big brother, big brother. Su Shihua quickly grabbed Immerse Shikong's hand tightly. Immerse Shikong's gaze was also somewhat complicated. His gaze turned and landed on Prince Immerse and Arbor. These two were still as elegant as ever. Even if they were just standing in the crowd with indifferent gazes, there was a sense of alienation and unapproachable. Chapter 2949. Greetings, Crown Prince, Crown Princess. Immerse Shikong turned around and cupped his hands in greeting towards Prince Immerse and Arbor. Oh, Brother King Zheng has also come. Immerse Yin nodded and responded absent-mindedly. King Zheng, Immerse Shikong, reached out and pulled Su Shihua up from the edge of the pit. He turned his head to look at Arbor and asked in a low voice, how did my younger brother offend the Crown Princess to actually provoke the Crown Princess to kill him? Su Shihua's current appearance was truly a bit tragic. Immerse Shikong almost couldn't bear to look straight at him. The Crown Princess' actions were too much. What kind of deep hatred could there be for her to act like this and continuously hit Su Shihua with God Power Pearls? Although Su Shihua's cultivation had already reached the 15th level of the Spirit Realm, he still hadn't broken through to the God Realm. How could he withstand being hit by the God Power Pearls again and again? No wonder he looked so miserable now. Being hit by the God Power Pearls like this, even if he didn't die, a layer of his skin would be smashed off. Big brother. Avenge me, big brother. Su Shihua finally straightened his body with great difficulty and uttered broken syllables from his mouth. He stared in shock and anger as he said, She tricked big brother. She tricked. A trace of anger and resentment flashed through Su Shihua's eyes. He used all his strength to grab his big brother Immerse Shikong's hand and stuttered. If this woman hadn't suddenly thrown so many God Power Pearls at him, how could he have been beaten to the point where he had no room to retaliate? It was simply a joke. In Su Shihua's opinion, Arbor, who used the aura concealing talisman, was merely a little third-level spirit master. If Su Shihua wanted to crush a little third-level spirit master like this, it would be a matter of minutes. However, things didn't go as he wished. The result was that he, Su Shihua, was beaten up and fell into the pit like a dead dog, unable to climb out. This matter made Su Shihua unable to raise his head, especially in front of a few junior sisters who had rushed over after hearing the news, and who usually had great admiration for him. He simply did not know what to do. He was so angry that he was about to explode. His scarlet eyes stared at Arbor. Arbor, huh? Before Su Shihua could figure out what was going on, he was slapped hard on the cheek. With a crisp paw sound, the corner of his mouth was slightly crooked, and he staggered back a few steps. Only when Mo Shikong reached out to support him did he manage to stabilize himself. Big brother. Su Shihua raised his hand to cover half of his face that was in so much pain. He looked at his big brother with reddened eyes. Although he didn't say anything, the meaning in his eyes was very obvious. Others have already bullied your younger brother like this. Don't you have anything to say? Mo Shikong's face was also very ugly at this time. He turned his head and looked at Prince Mo, who had personally slapped his younger brother Su Shihua across the air. Your Highness, my younger brother is young and insensible. He has made a fool of himself. Why go back? I will definitely teach him well. Brother Zheng really doesn't know how to teach sister-in-law. Ever since seeing Mo Shikong's appearance and the interaction between him and Su Shihua, Arbor finally understood who this man in front of her was. She finally understood why this strange man would suddenly make a move on her. It turned out that this Su Shihua was the elder brother of Princess Tao, who she had previously taught a lesson in the Despondent Pavilion. Indeed, like sister, like brother. Both of them were unreasonable people. Mo Shikong tightly pursed his lips and suppressed the anger in his belly. Chapter 2950. When he noticed the faint mockery on Xiao Mu's face, the anger in his heart shot up in a flash. He almost couldn't suppress it. Crown Princess, you have already used so many divine power balls to teach my brother a lesson. What more do you want? Mo Shikong's tone was very cold, as if he had been fished out from the depths of cold water. Although he didn't say anything, his opinion of this young crown prince consort had plummeted to the freezing point. He always felt that this girl should be a shrew. If she entered the Mo family, she would definitely cause the entire royal family to have no peaceful days. Mo Yin's face also darkened, and her gaze towards King Zheng became extremely cold. Brother King Zheng, you don't understand the situation, and directly yelled at the crown princess. Do you think that all the responsibility lies on the crown princess? Was it not? Mo Shikong looked at Mo Yin with an ugly expression. He tightly clenched his fist and desperately suppressed his anger. But a wave of evil fire still burned from the bottom of his heart, and he couldn't control it. It was too infuriating. Your Highness, to be honest, if the crown princess hadn't used so many divine power balls in succession, how could Hua have been beaten so badly? In terms of strength, the crown princess won't even be able to touch a strand of a Hua's hair. Was it not? Mo Shikong coldly looked at Prince Mo's icy expression. He slowly lowered his eyes and said indifferently, Your Highness should know very well whether what I said is the truth or not. You don't agree? Mo Yin turned her head and coldly looked at Su Shihua, who shrunk his neck and stood behind his elder brother Mo Shikong, and asked very forcefully. Su Shihua was pricked by the cold air released by the crown prince for no reason. He couldn't help but tremble for a while, but he forced himself to nod repeatedly. Of course I don't agree. His thoughts were basically the same as his elder brother Mo Shikong. If Arbor hadn't cheated by using so many divine power balls, wouldn't it have been a matter of minutes for him to crush the little girl in front of him with his cultivation as a level 15 great spiritual master? Arbor smirked and looked at him casually. If you're not convinced, let's continue. Didn't you say you wanted to teach this crown princess a lesson? Come. Arbor waved his small hand at Su Shihua. He looked like he was calling for a cat or a dog to come forward. The trace of mockery in his eyes was almost clearly discernible. There was actually someone who was rushing to be beaten up. Mo Yin also expressed that she didn't understand. She smiled and squeezed the little fellow's little hand. She slowly walked back a few steps, leaving an open space beside the deep pit for the two to fight. Hurry up. Xiao Mu grumpily hollered at Su Shihua. Can't you generate spiritual armor? I'll also create a spiritual armor for you to see. Huh. Su Shihua was unexpectedly amused by the little fellow. You're just a little level 3 spiritual master. What kind of spiritual armor can you generate? The spiritual armor generated by normal people was a partial defense, such as the arms, chest, head, and so on. Su Shihua, for example, was able to generate spiritual armor on both arms. He thought that he was already pretty good. After all, some people could only generate spiritual armor for one arm. If he wanted to expand the range of the spirit armor, it would take a lot of effort to expand every part of the armor. Arbor looked coldly at Su Shihua, who had generated spiritual armor on both arms. Her small mouth inadvertently curled into a lazy arc. You're a frog in a well. Arrogant fool. Chapter 2951. Today, he would let this idiot know that there was always someone better than him out there. In the future, he wouldn't easily offend some people that he couldn't handle. Arbor sneered. In an instant, a faint transparent layer of spiritual armor covered her red battle clothes like a second layer of skin and quickly spread up. It spread from her limbs to her chest and back, then wrapped around her slender neck. It climbed all the way up until it completely covered her head. From head to toe, a full-body spiritual armor was formed in an instant. The light and thin, full-body spirit armor clung to his clothes, almost as if it didn't exist. However, anyone with eyes could see that this was a peerless, full-body spiritual armor. Everyone simultaneously sucked in a breath of cold air and stared fixedly at Xiao Mu as if they were looking at a little monster. This little girl could actually form a full-body spiritual armor? Weren't spirit masters below level 5 unable to form spiritual armor on their own? Why was it that when it came to this little girl, it was as if the laws of heaven and earth didn't exist? Qi Xianxian jumped up excitedly and waved her little fist in the air. Jojo is mighty. Jojo will win. Duan Muqing and the others standing beside her wanted nothing more than to go up and cover Xuanxuan's mouth. This guy who lacked a backbone. With this roar, everyone's attention was attracted to them. Full-body spiritual armor? Su Shihua looked at Arbor in front of him in shock. He simply didn't know how to describe his feelings at this moment. The little girl actually formed a full-body spiritual armor with a wave of her hand and covered her from head to toe. Before he could react, the little girl in front of him lightly tapped her foot and rushed towards him like a speeding cannonball. That speed could almost be described as light. She was as fast as a streak of cold light and arrived in front of Su Shihua with a whoosh. Su Shihua only had time to cross his arms in front of him and block her sudden punch. Bang! The little girl's fist landed on his crossed arms, and a crack instantly appeared on the spirit armor, covering his arms with a crisp crack sound. Everyone was dumbfounded. Was this the speed and strength of a level 3 spirit master? It didn't look like it at all. Is Su Shihua a rank 15 great spirit master? That's right. Not only is he a level 15 great spirit master, but he also has an 8th level water spirit. The young lady seems to have fierce firepower, but she might not be Su Shihua's match. Before the person could finish complaining, he saw the young lady throw 2 more punches. She punched Su Shihua's face. In order to block her old fists, Su Shihua had no choice but to cross his arms and guard his front. As a result, the spiritual armor that formed on his arms completely shattered with a crack under Xiao Mu's 3 punches. The onlookers standing in the front row could hardly believe their eyes. What? A level 3 Little Soul Master was able to shatter the defensive spiritual armor of a level 15 Great Soul Master? This was simply a joke. Impossible, impossible. The onlookers in the front row could not help but raise their hands and rub their eyes. Then, they opened their mouths wide in shock, because at the same time, they saw a horrifying scene. After Miss Qiao shattered the spirit armor on the other person's arm, she pulled out a huge black axe that was even taller than her. Chapter 2952. With a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas, she ferociously smashed down on Su Shihua's head. If she hit him, wouldn't Su Shihua's head split open like a melon ladle? Red and white would all be exposed. Everyone couldn't resist closing their eyes, and the more timid ones even raised their hands to block their eyes. In the blink of an eye, Su Shihua continuously retreated several steps and threw out defensive spiritual tools from his inner world, putting them on himself one by one. Su Shihua felt that it was absolutely impossible for him to receive the enormous might of the axe before him. Ahwa! Mo Shikong's pupils contracted, and he cried out in alarm. His figure swayed, but just as he was about to step forward, he was stopped by Prince Mo. It's best that Brother Prince Zheng doesn't act rashly. Mo Lien said indifferently, if Brother Prince Zheng is itching for a fight, why don't I exchange a few moves with Brother Prince? The implication was that Prince Zheng absolutely couldn't be allowed to step forward and meddle in this matter. Not to mention that Arbor was disgusted with calling his parents when he couldn't win, and Mo Lien was also very disgusted. Obviously, everything was caused by him, but because he couldn't beat Xiao Qiao, he repeatedly pretended to be the victim. Wouldn't everything be fine if he didn't stir up trouble? He didn't believe that Jojo would rush up to fight him for no reason while he was walking on a road. 99% of the people who could cause such a big conflict with Xiao Qiao were their own doing. Mo Shikong's gaze was slightly angry as he glared at Mo Lien and said, Your Highness the Crown Prince, Brother Prince Zheng doesn't need to say anything. Mo Lien's gaze was still as ice, and she sneered, Brother Prince Zheng, don't tell me you don't know who caused today's matter? Want to pat his butt and scram after stirring up trouble? Did he think that they were good-natured people who could be easily molded? But Mo Shikong still wanted to say something, but that little stoic's axe had already landed. The huge black axe crashed into Su Shihua's outer defensive barrier and shattered it with a bang. Soon after, everyone saw the little stoic shattering Su Shihua's defenses one after another like a hot knife through butter. Su Shihua's body continuously emitted crackling sounds like firecrackers. In the end, he spat out a mouthful of blood and stumbled back a dozen steps before falling to the ground. He hung his head dejectedly and looked at Arbor in horror. Arbor pointed his sword at Su Shihua's throat. Please show mercy. Mo Shikong roared angrily and hastily leaped in front of Su Shihua to block the little stoic's longsword. With a swipe of his right hand, Mo Shikong took out a golden token from his inner world and waved it slightly in front of the little stoic. He said gravely, Crown Princess, this prince has the Emperor's death exemption golden medallion in hand. This prince is now ordering you to immediately stop all attacks. Kill him. Mo Lien's gaze chilled, and she seemed to murmur softly to the air. But the instant the command was issued, four incomparably swift shadows appeared around the little stoic. They circled around Mo Shikong's figure and leaped towards Su Shihua. For long swords simultaneously stabbed towards Su Shihua without the slightest bit of hesitation. Emperor's Shadow Guards? The most elite secret squad of the Underworld Court Guards? Mo Shikong's pupils contracted repeatedly. At this critical juncture, he obtained strength from who knows where, but his entire body abruptly burst forth with an intense divine power, blocking the four people's attacks one after another. Chapter 2953. Mo Lien's eyes darkened as she looked at Mo Shikong. With a wave of her hand, the four ghostly shadows quickly disappeared. The crowd could not help but rub their eyes. If it were not for the faint trace of blood at the corner of Mo Shikong's mouth, they would have thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them. The four of them disappeared as quickly as they appeared. If it were not for the fact that they had been staring at the scene, they would not have been able to catch a glimpse of the four figures in the blink of an eye. Has Royal Prince Zheng steeled his heart to become enemies with us husband and wife? Mo Lien's lips curled up in a mocking sneer. Mo Shikong's cold face was filled with anger. He could not help but cough up a small mouthful of blood. Su Shihua's eyes flashed. He scrambled to his brother's back and exclaimed, Big brother! Damn it! Even his brother was not a match for the 4 shadow guards. Who were they? Among the many people present, probably only King Zheng and Mo Shikong knew who these 4 people were. Not only did the emperor send the purple forest guards to the crown prince, but he also secretly rewarded the Hades court guards. That was not all. The emperor's shadow guards, the most elite of the Hades court guards, had 4 of them by the crown prince's side. The emperor's shadow guards were legendary. Every one of them was at least mystique, venerable rank, and above. They were the strongest transcendent god shadow guards. It was obvious how important this son of his was to the emperor. If it wasn't for the crown prince's gentle wave of his hand, Mo Shikong's life would have been lost at the imperial school. Mo Shikong could not help but laugh bitterly. He turned his head and glared at his brother, Su Shihua. His 2 sisters-in-law were too domineering. In the imperial city, not everything could be covered by Mo Shikong. Now that his brother had kicked the iron plate known as the crown princess, he did not know if he regretted it now. What Mo Shikong did not know was why Su Shihua regretted it. He was full of hatred. You cheated, Su Shihua reacted. He hid behind his brother and pointed a trembling finger in the direction of the little crown princess. You are not a little level 3 spiritual master. As soon as these words were spoken, there was an uproar all around. At first, everyone also felt that something was off. Now that Su Shihua had pointed it out, everyone wanted to slap their thighs and shout, "Yes!" How is this the fighting ability of a 3rd-rank spirit master? What kind of rank 3 spirit master could smash a portion of a rank 15 great spirit master spirit armor with a single swing of his axe? Wasn't this a joke? Everyone's gazes fell on Arbor in confusion. Arbor expressionlessly looked at Mo Shikong and his brother. His gaze coldly fell on Su Shihua. When this little girl emitted cold air, she was like a small moving ice sculpture. There was no trace of a person in her eyes at all. Everyone present couldn't help but shudder at the sight of such a young lady. Clang! The long sword was thrown to the ground by her, making a soft and crisp sound. Kill yourself. Everyone stared at her, dumbfounded. They thought that after Mo Shikong blocked the attack for his brother and got injured, this matter should be over. Who would have thought this was not over? Mo Shikong could not help but tremble in anger. At this time, he was still holding the death-free gold medallion issued by the great emperor, but now he only felt that the death-free gold medallion was very hot. Today will be the 10th chapter. First 2 chapters. After the 4 drip, he should be home at 3 o'clock. Calculating the time, it should be around 12 o'clock in the evening. Continue with the 8th chapter. Long wait, Mr. Author. Are you feeling better? Chapter 2954. In front of the little crown princess, this death-free gold medallion given by the great emperor was of no use at all. The young crown prince consort's attitude was clearly stated. She wanted Su Shihua to commit suicide and let him know that not everyone's place could be so easily provoked. Many times, his big brother might not be able to protect him for a lifetime. Looking at the long sword that was lying quietly on the ground with a faint green light flowing around it, Mo Shikong's face turned purple with anger. Big brother, big brother. Su Shihua was a little panicked. He secretly glanced at the little crown princess's cold face, then hurriedly crawled forward and hugged his big brother's trousers. Big brother, save me, big brother. How could this crown princess be so difficult to deal with? His big brother had already blocked the attack of the 4 hidden guards for him. His big brother had even vomited blood. What else did she want? And the few girls who originally came to watch the show with laughter also had ugly expressions. They were all junior brother Su's admirers and pursuers before. After all, with Su Shihua's family background as the younger brother of King Zheng, coupled with his outstanding talent and cultivation, many female disciples in the academy had taken a fancy to him the moment he appeared. The Su Shihua that the girls usually saw was naturally elegant and confident. How could he be as cowardly as he was now, and even hugging his big brother Mo Shikong's leg and crying? The girls' expressions changed at the same time. They instinctively felt that they were really blind in the past. They actually wanted to hook up with this kind of person. Crown Princess. Emo Shikong took a deep breath and raised his hand to press his frowning brows. My brother acted rashly in this matter, but what should be punished has been punished, and what should be beaten has been beaten. Crown Princess, if you continue to be so overbearing, isn't it a little inexcusable? Emo Shikong. The young Crown Prince Consort had a cold expression on her face, so she directly called her by her full name. I gave you face time and time again because of Lian's mother. Don't think that your face is big enough to be able to point fingers in front of me time and time again. Emo Shikong only felt that his heart was slightly stifled. I gave you face and called you Brother King Zheng. I didn't give you face. What can you do? The little crown princess kicked the long sword on the ground. I must kill Su Shihua today. Her ferocious gaze landed coldly on Emo Shikong. She instantly turned hostile and said ruthlessly, "It's useless for anyone to stop me. Who dares to stop me?" Emo Shikong slightly clenched his fists after hearing Emo Shikong shout. The scene became very stiff in an instant. Everyone was baffled and stood there in silence. Even the onlookers felt the cold wind blowing and couldn't help but take a few steps back. Perhaps even Lady Qiao Qiao herself did not realize that once she was truly angered, everyone would become listless. Even Xian, and the others who were familiar with her were trembling in fear and did not dare to open their mouths if she wanted to slaughter Su Shihua. Then Su Shihua would have to lie down and obediently wait to be slaughtered. For a moment, the entire courtyard fell into an awkward silence. Holy Sun Mi, Yin is here. Outside the crowd, there came a small rustling murmur. Holy Sun Mi Yin, who was dressed in a holy white robe and cold and handsome, walked straight out from the middle of the separated crowd. Behind him were several priests in the same white robes, each holding a short walking stick in their hands. Everyone bowed to the holy son of the temple. Mi Yan's gaze landed coldly on Arbor. You can't kill him. Chapter 29:55. He has already obtained a quota to go to the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm this time. From the moment he received the token to go to the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm, he received the protection of our Sun-Moon Temple. Holy Sun Mi, Yin slowly raised a hand and said coldly, "Before we set off for the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm, he can't die." Arbor glanced at the Holy Sun, and her expressionless face instantly turned cold. Holy Sun Mi, Yin found that the little girl in front of him, whose eyes were as calm as a dry well, were like two ice beads in a cold pool, slipping into a black abyss little by little. Heartless, indifferent, pitch black, and harsh. There was almost no light in her eyes. Why? In her previous life, any random cat or dog who was unhappy with her and wanted to step on her a few times could find trouble with her without a word. Why? When she fought back, there would always be someone who appeared in front of those weak people with the face of a righteous messenger, looking at her with accusatory eyes, accusing her of being vicious and cruel. Was it her fault? Was it all her fault? She deserved to be suppressed, deserved to be found trouble with. She fought back and beat the other party like a dog. Was it her fault? When she was the weak party, which of these strong people's relatives and friends would sympathize with her and help her? Ha! It was simply ridiculous. Jojo, what are you thinking? Emo Yin immediately realized that his little wife's state was not right. He hurriedly went forward and pulled her back to his side, patting her back to comfort her. Don't let your imagination run wild, Jojo. Leave this matter to me, okay? He lifted her little chin with one hand, making her silent eyes meet his. Her body was warm, as if the ice and snow around her had melted a lot. Arbor came back to her senses and looked up at Emo Yin. Emo Yin looked at her clear eyes, which were as clear as water. His slender figure was faintly rippling. His heart slightly relaxed, and he calmly called out, "Little Seven, roar," after a fierce dragon roar. Everyone felt a golden light suddenly appear in front of their eyes, which was exceptionally dazzling. After adapting to the glaring golden light with great difficulty, he slowly opened his eyes. A coiled golden dragon gently swept its tail and rolled up Su Shihua, who was hiding behind Emo Shikong, and threw him out. Su Shihua was flung to the opposite fence by a terrifying force of inertia, and a part of the fence collapsed with a loud crack. He collapsed to the ground in a daze and spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Mo Yin and Xiao Mu across from him with an increasingly horrified expression. Were these two monsters? He had already admitted defeat, so why did they still want to kill him? To put it bluntly, there wasn't any deep enmity between them. It was just him who was blind and came to find trouble with the little stoic. Now that he had been beaten to the point of vomiting blood and had been taught a lesson to the point where he had lost all face, why was he still unwilling to let him go? Why didn't this couple follow the routine? Mo Yin ordered coldly, "Kill him, little seven." This damn guy actually angered his JoJo to this extent, to the point where she was about to enter a demonic state again. Even death could not wipe out his crimes. The golden dragon immediately raised its head and roared angrily. A scorching red flame followed the soil under its feet and burned towards Su Shihua. Don't kill me. Don't kill big brother, save me, big brother. Chapter 29:56. Su Shihua's eyes were filled with horror. He got up on all fours and desperately ran out of the bamboo fence. Boom! The golden red flame was like a lion spitting fire. It moved forward rapidly and completely engulfed Su Shihua's body in an instant. The seventh yin circled in the air and roared angrily. Then it turned into a golden pillar of light and sank into the crown prince's raised right hand. Awa! Mo Shikong finally reacted and hurriedly ran out of the bamboo fence. After a while, he came back with charcoal, whose head was crooked and whose body had been burned to a pulp. His eyes were filled with anger. He tightly grasped his brother's body and shouted angrily, "Crown Prince, if I want to kill him, who dares to stop me?" Prince Mo threw a cold look at Mo Shikong and said in a cold voice, "You can put this account on me. Your younger brother was killed by Gudu, the person I want to kill. If I say he won't live past midnight tonight, he will never be able to see the morning light of tomorrow." Everyone's heart shrank, and they all took a step back, especially those who came with the intention of watching the fun. At this moment, they really wanted to slap themselves. Who asked you to come and watch the fun? Who asked you to court death? Now the Crown Prince of Shenzhou and King Zheng were sworn brothers who were about to fight. Maybe the Crown Prince's anger had nowhere to vent and would be directed at them. Be a good King Zheng. Mo Yin threw down this sentence and directly reached out to pick up Arbor, who had his head lowered. Then he turned and walked out of the door. After a few steps, he suddenly stopped and turned his head to glare at Minter Ma and the others who were standing at the door. They were all shocked by his sharp gaze. "Cancel my leave." Okay, cancel my leave, cancel my leave. I'll cancel it right away." Minter Ma replied repeatedly, and then wished he could slap himself. Was this the attitude of a mentor when talking to a student? He almost couldn't bear to look at this fucking fawning look. Holy Sun Me, Yin was so infuriated that one Buddha ascended to the heavens and two Buddhas left his body. Time and time again, he realized that his words were completely useless in front of Mo Yin and Arbor. This couple did not care about him at all. A little priest behind him said weakly, "Lord Holy Sun, actually we should just watch the show. There's no need to interfere." The little priest bit the words into his own mouth and couldn't say it. Because Holy Sun Me, Yin turned around and punched his head ferociously as he roared, "Shut up." The little priest cried silently in his heart. He felt that he was really too pitiful. He was clearly advising Lord Holy Sun not to make any more mistakes. Who would have thought that he would end up in such a miserable state? Holy Sun Me, Yin came and left quickly, mainly because he felt that he didn't have the face to continue being watched here. As for the Prince of Zheng, Mo Shikong, he lowered his head to look at his dying younger brother, who was charred black in his arms. His complexion was ghastly pale, and Mo Yin's parting words kept echoing in the depths of his mind. "Be a good King Zheng. Be a good King Zheng." The threat in her words was so strong that it almost gushed out. Mo Shikong reached out and clenched his fists, and his breathing quickened. Chapter 2957. The Crown Prince meant that if he continued to court death, he would think of a way to remove him from the position of King Zheng. Was he so much of an eyesore to the Crown Prince? Mo Shikong regained his senses and quickly ran towards the direction of the alchemy hall. Su Shihua was still alive. He could save him. He could definitely save him if his parents knew that Hua Di had died in the royal school like this. He wondered if they would cry until a hole appeared in the sky. When Mo Shikong thought of this, he couldn't help but secretly shudder. If Hua Di really died like this, then King Zheng's residence would never have a day of peace. Let's not talk about how King Zheng and Mo Shikong would go to the alchemy hall to beg the alchemist to save his brother. When Mo Lien carried his wife back to the room in the Donglin court, he kicked the door open and pulled his wife on his lap. Without any explanation, he kissed her. He kissed the little girl until her somewhat dazed and unfocused eyes gradually became a little more focused. 2 red clouds quickly flew up on her small face. Only then did he slightly release the restraint, allowing her to take advantage of the situation to gasp for breath. When did they return to the court? Sir Jojo frowned and raised his little hand to block a certain someone's lips. What are you doing? Kissing my own wife. Isn't it a matter of course? Emolian's handsome face was taut as he said seriously. Sir Jojo glanced at him and snorted. He would never admit that he almost suffocated to death just now. Why did you come back? It was all his fault that he didn't accompany her to cancel her leave. Everything was not going well. I was looking for the shadow guards to ask something. Before Sir Qiao Qiao could open her mouth to ask, Crown Prince Mo, upholding his wife's words as the truth of the heavens, spilled the beans and confessed everything in full detail. The night before we went to Yunxia Peak, I arranged for them to do something at Xiachi Garden. I left a trace of my soul and went to find Ming Yasi to fight that night. I asked them to cooperate with me. Yeah, in the end, he beat up Ming Yas so badly that he'll probably have to rest in bed for 2 to 3 days. You probably won't be seeing him for the next few days. Jojo stared at the man in front of him with his mouth agape. You beat him up? Yes. Emolian nodded and said with a look of disgust, It's a pity that this matter can only be carried out in secret. Even if we beat him up, we can't publicize it. Otherwise, not only will he suffer physical pain, his reputation will also be tarnished. The little fellow blinked his eyes and glanced at his exceptionally serious husband. He raised his little hand and touched his face. She suddenly reached out and hugged him, her little head swaying on his shoulder. Emolian, sometimes I wonder, what would I have done if I hadn't met you in this lifetime? She couldn't even think about it now. Just thinking about it made her heart ache. It felt like they had missed each other like this in their previous lives, and Mo Lien was stunned. He hugged her tightly in his arms and slid his palm gently on her back. Even if it's 10,000 miles away, even if it's the 9 heavens, even if it's the Yellow Springs, it's still impossible to separate us. How is it possible that we haven't met? It's impossible. He hugged her soft body tightly and whispered in her ear. Impossible, Jojo murmured softly. She rested her head on his shoulder and remained silent for a long time. Jojo, can you promise me something? Emolian suddenly reached out and held her little face. He looked at her with a serious expression, his eyes shining brightly. Chapter 2958. In the future, when you feel that the night is coming and you can't see any stars, just look at me, okay? Arbor wanted to laugh, but looking at his serious expression, she couldn't laugh at all. Even when I'm not by your side, you can look at the star I gave you. He carelessly touched the bottom of her neck and took out the little star from her collar, letting her hold it in her hand. Jojo. He sighed softly and rested his forehead on her sweaty little head. I don't know what kind of suffering and torture you've experienced in the past. Maybe I'm powerless to change it. But I want you to remember one thing. In the future, no matter how dark the night is or how long the road is, you'll have me by your side. No matter what you want to do, just do it. He raised his hand and touched her little face. I'll support you with all my strength. Arbor pursed her little lips, tilted her little head, and burrowed into his embrace. Emolian, let's have a little Emolian. I think he'll be like you in the future. He'll be cute when he's young, sensible when he's older, and know how to dote on his mother. That's me. I think that's pretty good too. When the time comes, there'll be another person to dote on me. Sir Jojo thought so, but he didn't continue. After all, he was a jealous lotus. It was possible that he would even be jealous of his son. Prince Mo's hand, which was holding his little wife, instantly froze. He looked down. He saw his little beauty's little face under the flickering candlelight, swaying as if she wanted to say something. It was so captivating. It caused his originally pure mind to explode with a loud bang. It transformed into a colorful, enchanting, and gentle scenery. This was intolerable. He originally thought that since his little wife was still young, he would grit his teeth and endure it. When little Gwuzzy grew up, he would swallow her in one gulp. He didn't expect his wife to ask for it herself. If he could still endure it, he wouldn't be human wife. Whatever you say is right. Prince Mo carried his wife up and quickly moved to the side of the bed. Do you want to have a drink first? Arbor had the urge to laugh. Why did she feel that her husband was so nervous that even his hands and feet were a little choppy? Do you want a drink to boost your courage? Emollient. How could he say that? He looked at his wife pitifully. After a while, he said, I'm not scared. Let's blow out the light. Emollient's and the lights on the other end. Bang, bang, bang. A series of knocks sounded from outside. Crown Prince Mo cursed inwardly. Just as her fingers were about to button up her coat, she heard the pounding on the door become louder and louder. Bang, 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 bang. Bang, 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 bang. Arbor silently lowered her little head. Prince Mo glanced at his little wife and said speechlessly, Baby, don't think that I can't see you snickering just because you're lowering your head. Arbor looked up. The smile on her face had already widened. This caused Crown Prince Mo's hand, which was holding the buttons of his outer robe, to pause slightly. Jojo. The Crown Prince was in a good mood now. He suddenly felt that the guy outside who was pounding on the door wasn't so annoying anymore. He moved to her side, took her little hand with a smile, and kissed it hard. Chapter 29:59. Nothing could compare to his Jojo smile, which made people feel comfortable. Crown Prince Mo beamed as he gazed at his wifey. He leaned close to her and whispered, How regretful, wifey. Looking at the time, we won't be able to make little Emollient today. The audacious Lord Xiao Xiao was actually blushing because of a few words from him. She suddenly felt that she should tease him back a little. But before she could do anything, bang! The people outside kicked the door open and rushed in one after another. Jojo, are you all right? Jojo. Chi Xian and the rest froze at the door. Looking at Crown Prince Mo and Sir Xiao Xiao, who were sitting in a row on the edge of the bed, their large hands clasped together as they gazed at each other, they felt like they had ruined someone else's happy occasion by foolishly barging in. Xiao Mu suppressed the smile on her lips and did her best to maintain an expressionless stoic face. What could happen to me? We've lost face in the academy. Little Fatty exclaimed. We were thinking, if we lost you as well. When the little Fatty met Crown Prince Mo's gaze, he suddenly couldn't continue speaking. Cough, cough. Actually, they were worried about Jojo. Jojo didn't look well just now, and they were all worried to death. Now that they saw that the little girl's face was expressionless, but she was obviously much more energetic than before, they were relieved. Prince Mo was indeed worthy of his name. Luckily, he was here and managed to coax Miss Xiao back. Duan Muqing looked at the two of them deeply and smiled. Since Jojo is fine, let's gather at the plaza. Plaza? Something happened in the academy. Chi Xian wanted to walk up and hold Jojo's small arm, but seeing Prince Mo standing beside Jojo, she didn't dare to walk over. Sir Jojo jumped off the bed and held Emollent's hand as they walked towards the door. What happened? The academy is embarrassed. Embarrassed? That poor Qin Xiu is missing. His Highness Ming Bao from Ming Province is also missing. Everyone talked as they walked towards the plaza. When they arrived, they realized that the plaza was already surrounded by a large group of people. When Principal Yun and a group of teachers arrived, everyone silently shut their mouths and looked up at Principal Yun and his group walking up the stairs. The principal frowned deeply and looked at the students. He said loudly, "I believe everyone knows what happened in the academy. Just now, the academy sent people to search the inner city but didn't find any traces of the two. I regret to inform you that student Qin Xiao and Ming Bao should have been abducted by unknown people." The academy square immediately went into an uproar. Everyone was whispering to each other, and they couldn't stop themselves from getting excited. "Principal, did someone sneak into our academy and abduct our students?" The hothead who spoke asked a question on everyone's mind. If someone was really able to sneak into the royal school and abduct them, then this enemy shouldn't be an ordinary person. His or her cultivation should be on par with Principal Yun's. Principal Yun looked at the student who asked the question and shook his head. What we can confirm now is that the two students got lost in the inner city. Chapter 2960. Now, the Academy has issued an emergency level 4 mission. We're calling for everyone to go out and search for them. Those who can find their 2 classmates in 3 days will be able to go to the mission center to collect the mission points. A burly man could not help but laugh when he heard this. We're losing people from the Divine Continent and the Underworld region. Don't tell me they'll all be found by us from the Sangzhou? The Crown Prince of the Sangzhou, Rong Li, could not help but frown as he glared at Ba Shu. This Ba Shu was loyal enough, but sometimes he seemed a little stupid. At this time, it was best not to speak, but he had to open his mouth to provoke the students from the Divine Continent and the Underworld region. As expected, Ba Shu's words immediately led to a war of words. Seeing that things were not going well, Principal Yun immediately raised his hands and gestured for everyone to keep quiet. Everyone quietly quieted down and focused their attention on Principal Yun. This emergency mission requires everyone to work together to complete it. After all, we've already sent so many people out, but in the inner city, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. We found nothing. The purpose of this mission is to motivate all the students from the 3 continents to take the initiative and participate. We hope that you can take this mission seriously. After all, since you've entered the academy, your status is only that of a student. There's no distinction between rich and poor. Today, you may be able to ignore your classmates going missing or even losing their lives, but you don't know when this kind of tragedy will befall you. If you extend a helping hand to others today, you'll receive help from others in the future. I hope you understand. Yes. The group of students shouted in unison. Even if they were not going for the mission points, they could not let others step on the heads of the royal school students and behave atrociously. Qin cultivator student went to the inner city to buy zither strings. Ming Bao seemed to be going to the inner city to buy something too. Both of them went missing on the same day. Could they have been kidnapped by the same person? The students started to discuss enthusiastically as they discussed forming teams to search for the 2 students in the inner city. Qi Xianxian glanced at Arbor. "Jojo, are we going?" She knew that Jojo had never been on good terms with the Qin family. As for that Ming Bao, he did not have much contact with him either. However, since they had the same surname as Dark Yass, they were most likely from the same family. Arbor considered for a moment, then nodded and said, "Since it's a mission from the academy, then we'll take it and walk around the inner city." They were just doing their best. After all, the inner city was so big. One more patrol team wouldn't make much of a difference. Even if she didn't get along with the people from the Qin estate, there was nothing wrong with the academy assigning her a mission. Moreover, she had briefly interacted with that 5th young Master Qin in the medical field, so she knew that this person was very fussy and didn't want to have too much personal contact with him. However, this was only a mission. Since all the students had accepted the challenge, their Seakong Planet Battle team wouldn't do that special treatment and would just accept the challenge. As for whether or not he could find it, that was another matter altogether. Qi Xianxian, on the other hand, was quite happy. She had accepted a mission and was going to take a stroll around the inner city. Who knows, maybe they would be lucky enough to meet these 2 students and complete a level 4 mission. How great would that be? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.